Welcome to another episode of Two Ales and Hockey Tales with Wally. And today I'm so excited to have on, I didn't write down, 42-year-old from Enderby, British Columbia, Canada. His hockey journey has taken him to Canada, the USA, Italy, and he is a legend of Japan in the Tohoku Free Blades.
Yeah.
Laced up for the Free Blades for 5 seasons and was, in that time, a 2-time first-team All-Star, the league's best offensive defenseman, most goals by a defenseman in the league, and more importantly, a 3-time Asian League champion. But he is best known around the shed as my roommate with the ragtag Daytona Beach Bombers that marched all the way to the finals with broken sticks and no money. Then he captained the Stockton Thunder and was an East Coast All-Star, and then again captained the South Carolina Stingrays, while also mucking it up in the A both times, folks. But those Stingrays, he just in fact finished the job this time, becoming a Kelly Cup champion. At RIP in the NCAA, captained that squad too for 2 years, and was a 3-time All-Academic. Smart. And way back when he was a puppy with the Vernon Vipers, was the D-Man of the year and led his team in scoring, and I haven't seen him since 2007. Welcome to the shed, Brad Farynuk.
Hey, thanks for having me, Wally.
Hey, thanks for making the time for me, buddy.
Life's busy, isn't it?
It really is.
Hey, I got a surprise. I dug deep into the closet today.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Right,
Did
you
you?
ready?
When you get into your no way. You got a Bombers hockey shirt?
You know, it was the Bomb Squad that there's no actual team logo on it or anything. It was just like a
What do those numbers mean?
Text. Do you remember these T-shirts we got?
No.
The 1862 T-shirts?
I don't remember that shirt at all.
What?
Was it a regular season shirt?
Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't there for when you did
this is what Derek Clancey wrote on the board, the whiteboard, like in game notes, like before every game. Don't you remember?
I only paid attention to some stuff.
Come
only
on,
the important stuff.
18 players, 60 minutes, 2 points, man. The magic recipe.
I can't believe we had shirts. I never got one. I was actually walking out here tonight thinking, I got hats, I got shirts, I got jerseys from like almost every team except the Daytona Beach Bombers of Ohio. And you have a shirt. You got swag.
Well, you know what? I was actually choked. I looked for a couple different times deep in my old basement or my old bedroom at my parents' house, because I used to have, for playoffs, we had got those red hats. I swear, like a Booster Club member bought them for us, and they had the big D, and on the side they said "Got Sticks." And I had that hat for like, I don't know, 12 years, but I think my mom threw a bunch of my crap away. So.
There were guys on the way to the finals that couldn't get sticks because we had no money, hadn't paid our bills. We still made it there though, didn't we?
We made it there, yeah.
What an interesting year though, but it's so fun for me locking a guy down, and like whatever year that was from, all of a sudden the memories start flood back. I haven't thought about Dayton in some time. What a time in our lives. And I just want to get this out of the way off the start. I was young. I had lived in NCAA in college with other roommates that maybe weren't taking care of things too, and it got pretty out of hand by the end of college, and I wasn't a good enough roommate. I wasn't clean enough. I didn't clean up after myself enough, and I know that now, and I see that now, and I needed to be better, and I'm sorry, Frankie.
Dude, you got to have the balance. It always seemed to be like one who was maybe a little bit more responsible than the other, and you know, you had those all roommates all along the way, right?
Well, and it's like I was never a captain ever in my career. I'm not a C. That's why you wore the C everywhere, and I'm more of an assistant captain type of guy. I'm here to bring the boys together. I'm not the captain.
Absolutely, man.
We did have some fun in those apartment complex, but they weren't like the nicest places, were they?
Not at all.
It was like the low income housing of Dayton, Ohio.
No. Wally, the only thing I can really remember that sticks in my mind is your bathroom performances where you'd leave the door open.
I was an open door policy type of a guy.
I know, yeah. Like you needed the view or something.
I felt claustrophobic if you shut the door. It's weird how everybody remembers different things. I don't recall myself keeping the door open that much, but then again, can happen nowadays too. So I guess nowadays the time's got to be right though. We're not in the same environment.
Yeah.
Were you there the day you weren't there the day of the flood? You were there when the ceiling collapsed.
Absolutely. We had like a garden hose running out of our light fixture. Like,
Dude,
that
that
was
was
like
crazy.
water.
That was
Yeah,
crazy.
we walked in there was like an inch and a half of water on the floor.
No, I remember sitting on the couch, and then all of a sudden, like water started pouring out at one spot, and then all of a sudden, a huge hole broke through the ceiling, and it was just water, like just all over all of our stuff.
Nothing like coming home from a road trip when that happens.
Oh man, memories. But there's a few of them from that incident. And this is almost like a story that's never I don't really talk about this one on here often because not many people are around. And Frankie, thank you for coming today so I can finally talk about this. But there was a young lad down the way at these apartment complexes that, I mean, I guess he maybe had some mental challenges, you could say, but the water was really cold. Like the pipes froze in the apartment above us and there was nobody living there, right? So then that was the flood that broke through our ceiling into our place. But it wasn't just our apartment. This happened in numerous of them. And there was a kid down the way, ankle deep, standing in the water by himself, no parents around, just standing in the freezing cold water. And I'm like, dude, you gotta be cold. Can I help?
Well, it was like minus 17 or something when all those pipes broke or whatever, like I'll say Celsius, but yeah.
When that kid was standing, Tommy gun was
Tommy
standing
gun.
there in his ankle deep in the freezing cold water. So then we helped him out and got some of their family heirlooms out of their apartment. And I guess our next door neighbors, what a bunch of beauties too. But freshman Bruce and Corey LeClaire, who I haven't tracked down yet, but what an absolute dandy. But
LaFleur.
yeah, LaFleur and I went down and helped the kid, and so did you. And I don't think you were willing to participate, either that or you were called up to the AHL. But for us helping that kid, they invited us down for a turkey dinner. And Corey LeClaire and I went down to their place for a deep fried turkey dinner.
I was not there for that. I think me and Frisch were gone. We must have been in Syracuse.
Yeah,
I
way to
wasn't there
go,
for that,
big
but
AHL guys. Eh? You're not staying for turkey dinner in the coast? There's more background story to it, folks, but you might have to list episode 28, I think it was, with Justin Miser, where he talked. The kid had some issues. There was some background. He maybe was on some websites that, bad news, but we helped him out and then went over for turkey dinner.
Well, no, I remember the story when we were all like, I don't know, it was the springtime. And we were sitting on the couch. I think we were playing like Madden or something, weren't we? Like, and we had the door wide open to our apartment, and he came tiptoeing along outside and whatever. And he's like, "Oh, hey guys, can I play?" He's like, "I got to be the Cincinnati Bengals."
Honestly, I remember where I was, and you obviously remember where you were, because I had gone to Buffalo Wild Wings with Izzy, like we did pretty well every day, and we got a call from you guys, and you were like, you guys have to hear what just happened with the fella you helped out in the flood.
Yeah. Well, we were sitting on the couch there, like middle of the second quarter in the football game. And I don't know, this had to have been like the third or fourth time you'd say he probably came over and played vids with us, right?
You play a lot of video
And
games with us, that kid.
and then about the third time, he's like, "Hey guys," he's just like sitting there. Yeah, so I gotta, my mom told me that I gotta tell you guys something. We're like, oh yeah, we're just pounding the keys and he's like, yeah, my mom told me that I'm supposed to tell you that I got in big trouble because I sexually assaulted my sister, and we were like, and
It's not funny, but like
I know we were like
the whole
froze in
the
our
whole
tracks.
the whole situation was just
Holy smokes. We're like, and then that
we've been
changed the
playing
outlook on
video
it.
games with this kid for a couple weeks.
I know. I mean,
And the story might have been worse than that. And
oh,
yeah, we were like, holy moly, we should help this kid with the flood. And then he wants to come over and play video games with us every day. And all of a sudden he's like part of the team. He's part of the Dayton Bombers.
well, and I can remember us like sneak after he disclosed this information. We'd come home from practice and we'd be like sneaking around the corner to get in and close the door quick.
And he'd be there.
Oh, yeah.
But that wasn't even the only bad story that season. Jeepers, we're really getting off to a hot start here. Bad stuff that happened in Dayton, because there was a lot of good stuff too, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, one guy was we don't need to name any names or whatever, but start of the season, I remember I wasn't there again. I'm not there when bad stuff happens or whatever. But it was my first call up, and I felt more of a team in Dayton because that's where I was all the time, and I thought they were more of a team. But when I get called up, I'm getting calls from the Dayton boys, and they're like, "You hear what's going on? You hear what happened today?" And the boys just went to practice. Were you there then?
I don't actually. I think I was there. I
So
was there.
the story was that one of the fellas, absolute dandy, that built a big beer wall of all his empties and tried to fill a whole wall of empties, which this was old school hockey, folks, that was
Yeah.
something a guy tried to do in pro hockey, but he tried to fill a whole wall of empty cans by the end of the year. But he was sitting there in his undies, doing whatever. And then all of a sudden the police broke down their door and confiscated computers and all sorts of stuff. And then right near the start of the year there, we were just a few games in, all of a sudden a Dayton Bomber is charged with trying to talk to an underage online and is going to jail. And that guy was like he was on our team, and none of us knew anything about it. And then all of a sudden it's in the newspaper, like, and a Dayton Bomber, and you're like, really? And we're on that team.
Yeah, that was craziness. I was blown
Dayton
away.
was
I'm like,
crazy, dude.
I thought that was like some sort of joke. Like I'm like that. I mean, it was not a joke, but I was like, I mean, I
I
I
guess you
remember his
never know what
roommate.
people do when
Are
they
we
go
allowed
home
to
from
say names on
practice.
here? So Kells is. I remember him telling me the story. I'm laying on the couch in my boxers watching TV this afternoon, and the cops bust into my apartment door, and he's like, "I'm in my boxers."
Just drinking a beer in his underwear.
He's like, they start grabbing our laptops. They're combing through everything. It's like, hey, are you so and so? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not. He's like, oh, we had reports that you had a plan to meet an underage female at a coffee shop in Cincinnati or something. It was, I don't know. It was
But
messed up.
then, yeah, and then that guy went there to try and meet someone, and it was a sting operation. And
Yeah.
like, whoa. And anywho, we never really did get to know the guy. The guy was only there for a couple games and then went to jail.
Yeah.
So, but that season was something else. Like,
Hey, but that, I mean, that was a fun season. I don't care
fun
if you like,
guys.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where it was like, I don't know if like the whole like the maybe like the lackluster, I'll say, treatment that you got compared to other pro teams and whatever. Like it was the rallying point, right, for the boys, right? Like it was like we had nothing left but each other and
Yeah.
a wicked coach, you know.
Well, and this was where our pro careers were, was that these were the apartments we were living in. And yeah, the treatment maybe wasn't always. I mean, especially the guys on East Coast contracts. I mean, you were with Syracuse too, but they couldn't get sticks. The guys on East Coast deals were having a real tough go getting a hockey stick to play hockey, and it was interesting because Derek Clancey, what a coach he was, man. I thought he was he was probably the most influential coach I had, but early on in my career.
Yeah, I mean, especially for me, as he was the D coach for most of the time. I know what was his technical title, was associate head coach or something, but I mean, yeah, he was really running the show. I mean, ran every practice, and I'll say, I mean, the cool thing with Clance was, I mean, he got the big picture. I'll say the 30,000 foot level coaching. I mean, but I mean, he was a experienced player. Like he got it. He had been through the tour, right?
Yeah.
But the details, you
Yeah.
know, so cool. I mean, like I was thinking about this T-shirt and whatever and Clance, right, and stuff on the whiteboard. I'm like, I can remember like our goal every period in every game was to try and get 10 shots for, 6 shots against. Like, I think about that now. I'm like, our goal was to get 6 shots against or less. I'm like, we had a freaking phenomenal goalie in Burkle who could have stopped 46, and he did some games, right?
Oh yeah,
But
he really
I'm like
carried
to
us.
set that bar and like us like hit it some nights was like, whoa, you're keeping shots at like 15, and we had a goalie that can stop 94% of the shots. So, it was like, well,
Well,
you know,
then I always find that there's always certain things that stick with me of like what a coach said to me, and I remember the time they said it. I remember when it happened, and I'm like, I've never thought of that before. When I got sent down from Syracuse, and when I first got to pro, and I'd been playing man on man in college in the D zone, and then we have a D zone practice, and I start doing man on man, and then all of a sudden they don't think they can trust me, and then I don't get any time, and I went down to the coast, and one of the first practices, he painted the ice and then showed me what my job was as a right winger. And I'm like, this is all I got to do. You're telling me this is all I got to do now? I just got to have this quadrant and I just got to be ready to go then and have my sticks in the right spot and then come back here. And I'm like, oh, I can do that.
yeah.
You know?
Oh, if he wants to go down that low, he's like, you just hand him off to the D man.
Yeah. And you guys
Okay.
stay on your sides.
Yeah.
Just
No, but there's little stuff that I'm like, from that team, I'll say as defensemen, we had, I mean, the handcuffs on us in a lot of respects, but I'm like, I can remember, I'm like, I like to throw body checks and whatever. Clients would be like, you don't throw body checks in our own zone. I was like, what? I'm like, well, don't we want to be like physical? I'm like, we got a 6'8" D man over there and a couple more big guys over there and Uncle Ford 6'4" over here. I'm like, we're not throwing checks. I'm like, probably our strength. It's not our speed on our back end that is good. It's our strength. I mean, like, no, we don't throw finish checks. He's like, it's a waste of your time and energy. He's like, stick on puck, stick on puck, stick on puck everywhere. Right? So let them
but
just.
but like what's weird for me is how much I've taken from Derek Clancy into my coaching now. I'm coaching under 13 kids now, and I tell them, don't rush into the corner. Don't get beat out of the corner. Everybody is too aggressive at this age. They're all trying too hard. And it's
Yeah.
like, stop, slow down, and he does not beat you. He stays to the outside. And that's what he was teaching us.
Yeah. But stuff like, I mean, I was used to having pretty free reign to like jump up in the play from like junior on. Because I switched back and forth, like playing forward and D every year growing up in minor hockey. But like Clance, I remember I mean, that guy benched me. I think you remember that triple overtime game in Florida. What was that? Would that have been the conference, maybe semifinals or
that was the
conference
semifinals
finals?
of the whole deal. That was to get to
Yeah.
the finals was in Florida.
Like he benched me in like, what was that, game 5 or something? I'm like, in like the third period because I jumped up, like it was a 2-on-2, and I jumped up to make it a 3-on-2, and he benched me for like 2 shifts. He's like, you don't jump up in the play unless you're making it a 2-on-1. And I was like, what? And
And
then we went on
that's
the
not how they're
trip.
playing nowadays.
No.
These are everywhere.
I was like, and later that game, I mean, we went to triple overtime, and I scored the win. Tifu went behind the net, popped it out to me. I dipped down low to like the hash marks, and I
Power play.
it out front. I put it in, right.
I was
We
on the
win.
ice for that goal.
Yeah.
I was on the other side at my one-timer side of the net. It was like we had a power play to start like the third overtime or so.
And
It was an exhausting game.
I come into the tunnel. I mean, I had like IV bags between the intermissions and whatever. I was cramped all
You
the
were
hell.
cramped. I remember that. You're a cramper.
I come in the tunnel, and Clance just gives me a fist pound, and he says, "You're lucky you scored there, dipping down that low." I'm like, dude, we're like ready to cry. We're at such.
Well, the thing was, he was being hard on us because he wanted us to get it. But like,
Absolutely.
I remember a time in the regular season that it was a 3-on-2, and I tried to make a pass. I didn't try to do anything fancy. I tried to make a pass, and it hit the defenseman's stick and went the other way, and I never saw another shift. And I didn't know what to say to him. He goes, "Well, if you're gonna try that shit, it has to work." I was like, "Oh." But he changed my career because he taught me I had to be defense first all over the ice. And then once I got used to that and then started sprinkling back in my skill and doing like between the leg stuff, because there was no way I was doing that with him as my coach.
No, I'm with you. I'm pretty thankful for Clance, and I mean, takeaways and stuff that
we all need to be from that year.
Oh yeah, big time. That you like, and you understand after that, he was being hard on you because he, saw something in you, or he wanted to help you get somewhere else, like, and so that, that means a lot. And you
know what he's doing now?
You'll coach, details that he taught, and so will I, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
my son's only 6 or 8, but we're starting to learn hockey a little bit now, right? So
it goes by fast. But do you know what Clance is doing now?
Well, isn't he assistant GM of the Leafs now?
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Well, he was in Vancouver here, right?
I found it interesting that he never coached again after that year when he was so good at it. Like, yeah, there was days he pissed you off, but for the most part, he told you the gosh darn truth, and he told it right away, and he would shut things down that were wrong. But the one thing I remember the most about him was I was just getting to know him, but we were about to do a video session, and he pulled me aside away from the team and said, "I'm going to give it to you in front of the whole team today." And he's like, "But I'm just letting you know, you're not doing anything wrong. I just think you can take it, and some guys can't." And I was like, I've gotten roasted in video before, but I've never had the coach come up and tell me that I was going to get roasted and that it was okay. And then when I was listening to it, and all the boys like look over at you, like, "Are you okay?" Like, he's really giving it to you. Like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay, boys. Yeah, I'm fine."
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Well, and I even remember, like, I mean, did he not teach you this? I can remember you all the time just cruising down like a 3-on-2 or a 3-on-3, and you just were taking the puck wide on the right wing, and you would literally, I'm certain Clance taught you this, just see like Miser or JoJo going to the off post, and you would just fluff that little spinner like 50-mile-an-hour shot at most off the the goalie's right pad, and it would just fluff right out there, and Miser go right in. And
he did teach me that though. Like, that's like a thing nowadays, but he was the one that taught me like the pass off the pad. But he would like, I had kind of done it before in college, but it's like, if you can like, if it's too hard, it's hard to find that rebound, but if it's gentle.
Yeah, man. I mean, so many ins and outs that guy knew of the game. And yeah, I took that everywhere in my career, all those details. And even when you got like, I mean, with us D-men, like after practice, like he'd sit down in the corner and hammer pucks at us, like until we, for an hour if we wanted, to work with us. I mean, those are the extra things that like the coach is willing to work with you with stuff like that, as opposed to just,
Yeah.
threaten you in the room or threaten to send you down or threaten to fire you when you're overseas or whatever. I mean, those
But
are
it's
the things
so
the
different here.
connections made, right?
Yeah, and then you get to have him in your shed years later. But yeah,
Yeah,
he
it's almost now I'm he's leading a good life now, right? Like, but
well,
I
and
mean,
he
it
deserves
is,
it though.
I'm
He
with
was
you.
a
I'm like,
hockey guy.
it's almost sad that, like, his tribal knowledge didn't get,
Yeah. That's just
carried
in
on,
scouting.
for decades
Well,
to how
for
many
what he
players.
did for you and me, and that's
Yeah,
just a couple of us. And I know Fordo would say the same thing, and a bunch of other guys on that team. And
absolutely.
that he
Fresh.
didn't coach again is kind of sad. But I guess a general manager's a better kick than that. So
Yeah.
guess he's doing fine. But if you can take that team to the finals, but when you look back at that team, I don't know if you've thought of this, but our power play was you and Fordo on the point, and then me, Jojo, and Mize on the forward line. And
No,
there's a picture of us, and
Labby
Labby
played.
was there with you.
Yes.
Yeah, Labby, he was a beauty too. What a great
Yeah,
group of dudes.
absolutely. Yeah.
Fordo's like coaching in the AHL now.
He's still in Milwaukee, isn't he?
I think so. It's
Yeah.
hard to keep track of all these guys, man. But I guess you didn't move around as much as me, so we got to better keep moving instead of just licking Clans. You know, um, jeepers, we got a bit heavy into that. But should we stick with Dayton or not? Because that hotel situation when our ceiling collapsed, that whole situation, man, that we went to the finals and almost won when it was all like that. That they had us move to a hotel for a few days and our owners complaining about it and trying to get out of paying, and our place, all of our stuff is a lot of it's ruined. It was a lot of water.
I
And
mean, are we going? I mean, you usually like to go through don't you go through everybody's background, like, kind of chronologically or whatever? Are we doing this
I'll
on the
do it.
bomber?
I'll do it however I want.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Do you
my
remember when we
big thing
moved
is
back
like,
into the apartment when we were done at the
no, no,
hotel?
no, 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 no.
Sorry,
So
what?
I was thinking, like, I mean, that playoff run. I mean, the bad news bears, like, we were down 3-1 in that opening series to Cincinnati, right?
Yeah.
And I remember well, what did we say after game 4? We're like, screw this. We're going to we're going to Buffalo Wild Wings and we're getting drunk.
But not we did it wasn't Buffalo Wild Wings. It
Was
was
it Adobe Gilas?
no, we had a beanbag tournament at our beautiful apartment
No, but
complex.
after practice, we went to the B-dubs, played photo hunt because that's what we do.
Yeah,
And
well,
then
wait, big photo hunt, guys. I learned that from Mike Jarmuth of Western Michigan. It's a great game.
and
We
we're
spent a
like,
lot of
well,
time at B-dubs,
yeah.
but I remember the beanbag tournament, and we were playing like all the college games, like all day long out in the sun, just drinking away right before game 5.
Yeah.
And then we showed up to game 5 completely sunburned, and we go in and start getting shit from the coaches about how if you don't win, your careers aren't going to go this way. It's not going to go that way. You have to win to go places. You have to be better. Meanwhile, we had fun all day playing beanbags and we're sunburned. And then sure to shit, we went out and won 3 straight because we thought we were having fun.
I will correct you though. I swear before we started having that fun, I think Miser went home, packed his
Practice.
bags up, and booked for an hour, and then came over. He's like, "We're out of here in one day." He's like, "What did
He
he have?
did
Like a
have his
Ford
car
Explorer
packed.
or something?" Like, yeah, my car is pretty much packed. So we go down to Cincinnati, hungover, and we won like 7-2 or something. I'm like, I had like 2 goals and an assist. I
I
come off
remember
the
it
ice.
was well, I don't know what you'd call them, but Kels's line, the third line with him and Borat, and they all of a sudden went out, ran amok, scored 3 or 4 goals, and then all of a sudden we were heading back for game 6.
Well, I remember getting on the bus that night, and Mize like grabs me as I'm going down the aisle. He's like, Frank, what are you doing? He's like, don't go scoring goals. He's like, man, we got to get out of here. Next
We
game,
really did have to keep him into it that playoff run, didn't we? He was so done. He hated Dayton.
Oh yeah, he was so choked. And like same thing, like game 6, and then we're like, well, it's game 7. I guess we better give her. Because we did the same thing after game 5. We're like, well, that worked. So back to B-dubs or Adobe Gilas for Wednesday cheap night or whatever that was, right?
Oh my
We're like,
gosh,
well,
that
that worked.
Adobe Gilas, man, did we have a time there that year. We were there a lot. There was obviously B-dubs, but then Chipotle was just kicking up too. We were there. But anywho, yeah, like
I mean,
food.
you got to have that on your profile somewhere, is being able to sing Caribbean Queen at karaoke. You
Our
love that song. You love that song, Wally.
it's a great song. Do you remember I always loved the song Find Out Who Your Friends Are?
Yes.
I still love that song, and I actually just posted a video about it today because I think it's so neat when I can call my buddies from we played together 17 years ago,
Holy
and we
smokes.
get in contact, and here we are in my shed right now, and I just love that stuff, you know? It's so fun. But I do like Caribbean Queen, and well, you weren't called up to the AHL for the rookie party, right? You dressed as a woman and hit Adobe Gilas?
I wasn't at the rookie party in Daytona.
Oh, way to go. You're such a big AHL guy.
No,
It
no.
was something. So I was singing karaoke a different night then? Okay, whatever. We better move
Yeah.
on. I remember at the end of the season when we finally realized that Dayton University was on the other side of town and that we could have been going to university all year instead of where we were hanging out. Oh, gosh. Anyways, they made us move in from that hotel. I got sidetracked about the flood again with the pipes breaking and all her stuff getting ruined and whatever. And we go live in a hotel. And then when they had us move back in, there was drywall dust everywhere. The plastic was still on everything. And we just lived like that, like right through playoffs.
Yeah. Still
I
just
remember you like, we're professional players and there's dust everywhere and there's sawdust here. And I'm like, whatever, Frankie, let's
yeah.
just go.
And your biggest concern was like, Frank, are we gonna play Guitar Hero now? Like,
There's a lot of Guitar Hero. Jeepers, I never thought I was a musician until you sent me to the coast. A lot of time to kill in Dayton, Ohio.
yeah. No,
Oh, gosh.
and one of my favorite stories with you, Wally, as a roommate was when we had like,
I have
remember
one,
these
I'm pretty sure, but you
the
tell yours.
the skate with the Bombers. Well, we had like it was on like a Sunday, right? And we had to drive out to some weird arena somewhere to skate with the Bombers, right? And we went out like I think I came home at 2. I think you got home at about 5:30 or something. And we had to go to skate with the Bombers at like 9 and drive to I forget the name of that place, like across Dayton. It was like an hour away.
I don't know where the
And I
story's
go in your
going.
room and you were passed out on the floor. And then you just start bursting out laughing and you're like, skate with the Bombers. And I'm like, oh no, I'm like, what are we gonna do here? I'm like, I can't take him to skate with the 7-year-old kids right now. I'm like, skate with the Bombers, skate with the Bombers, Frank. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, I don't know. Did I just end up leaving you at home, or did I feel like I left.
Yeah, no, because I don't recall being at skate with the Bombers.
No, you were not making her.
Oh man, sometimes it can get to you mentally that you get sent to the coast and you just can't handle it. You can't get there. I'm sorry, kids, I wasn't there. I meant to be.
But the Dayton Bombers taught me. I was like some of the older guys, like our friend Kells, you know, seeing some of the displays, the tricks about being hungover at practice.
That guy, man, have you ever played with anybody that could smell up a rink like him? Those farts in practice were so disgusting. He would skate by and he would just say something funny to the boys and be like, sorry, fellas. And then all of a sudden there'd be a fog of just disgusting shit.
But I can remember we were the one practice he walked in and you could tell like he did not sleep and he was still
Just
just
in
cut.
one.
Hey? And everybody knew. Like I think he was like 15 minutes late. Like he just walks in, sits up on the bench, and he just kind of looks like this. He's like, "Okay," in his mass, his deep mass accent. Right? He's like, "You okay? Let's get something straight. Looking off the kid in practice today is perfectly acceptable. The kid wants no passes in practice today." And then he didn't say a thing. And we all just erupted.
Oh gosh, that guy was too much. Not to pump Clance's tires again, but Kels could do that. He could show up to a practice totally buckled, and he knew where his career was, and Clance knew he was buckled, and he knew he smelt the rink up, but he also knew he was going to be there to play every game, played the right way, played hard. But then I showed up to a practice hungover, like not even close to bad as Kels, and he pulled me aside right in the middle of practice, and like he said, "Hey, you have fun yesterday?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you ever want to get out of here?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, if you do this, you're never getting out of here." And I was like, "Ah, gotcha."
Gotcha.
Okay. So
Hey,
don't
but
be like him.
you know
You
what
know?
though? Kels is a good player, and I know that you might have whatever different comments about his off the ice after hours mentality, but um, I got a phone call not not the next year, the summer after, when I was going to South Carolina. I went to Wilkes-Barre camp, and then I go to South Carolina. I'm like, okay, I'm starting off here in the coasts here. I'm like, my old college roommates there. I'm like, they're gonna have a great team, blah blah blah, whatever. And Jared Bednar is our coach, and he calls me when I'm driving down there. He says, "Yeah, so Brad, yeah, welcome to the team, whatever. Um, what do you think about me potentially signing Paul Kelly?" And I was like, "Oh."
My gosh.
I'm like, he's a good player. I'm like, he wins faceoffs. He has the mental part of the game, which is just, I mean, like people can't think about that. The Dayton Bombers mold was perfect for him because he didn't have to skate 100 miles an hour everywhere. So he could just float along like a Cadillac just in cruise mode, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
and but he knew where to be. And I mean,
Yeah.
like
And
what
he
he
was
probably
smart.
got like a point a game in that league. I mean,
No, but like if you look at the playoffs when we go to the finals, and you could have called them our third line, and he wasn't really on the power play, he was our leading scorer in the playoffs. He scored 20 points in the playoffs. But hold on 1 second, I'll be right back. Game back on. All good. I got another one for you though. Um, Paul Kelly was a beauty, a great player. And what was funny though is that our whole team knew what he was doing away from the rink, and everybody was okay with it because we knew he was coming to play every game.
absolutely.
Yeah. What a
Dude,
group of dudes that went to the finals that year.
I mean kills. I mean that guy probably single handedly. I mean, I can't even count like on how many hands that guy put me in like tears laughing. Like what a legend that was your team, man. Like I got to see that like all in South Carolina for like 2/3 of a season too. Like two
So
years later, I'm like, I
he
mean,
did play for you guys then?
oh yeah,
Really? And when you won it?
absolutely. Let's just say
He
he,
didn't stay till the end of the year?
he might have dug his grave after maybe an overindulgence one
Mm.
Sunday afternoon. And we had a few extra players, and it was kind of came to he put the coach in a difficult position, maybe, right? Like,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah, that can happen. Um, that happens in
what a
hockey.
beauty, man,
He
dude. That
is.
guy on some Sundays there, because we had like South Carolina, we had the apartments, like the interior pool complex and whatever, like when the springtime it gets warmer and whatever. But You know, like that
He
guy,
just I
what
can't
a
even
beauty.
picture. I saw him in Dayton. I can't picture him in South Carolina sitting by a pool.
On football Sundays, like he would get a 30 pack at like 9 in the morning. And like we'd all like wake up at like 11 after road trips or 1 in the afternoon and whatever, right? And like we'd walk over to Kel's apartment and he'd already be like 9, 10 deep into a game and a half of football. I'm like, I laughed that way. We go back and we go out and eat and whatever. Come back a few hours later, like it had been around dinner time. And I walk in his apartment and he's got, that 300 movie with like the Spartan Warriors or whatever,
Yeah.
right around that time. He's got the empty beer box on his head with the two eye slits like this. And he's just like, "Farny, this is Sparta." And I'm like, he had killed this 30 pack. I'm like, in one day, I'm like, he's like, "We're going downtown and whatever." I'm like, "No, we aren't, Kels." I'm like, dude, like previously, like weeks before that, like because I was captain there. I'm like, oh, I'll kind of look after Kels when we're at the bar. There was this like place that had this live band that we go to Sunday nights, and Kels have been drinking all day. We go there, we're drinking. I'm like, okay, it's like 11 o'clock. We're getting home. We get in a cab, and Kels is just in his thick mass accent, and he's spouting off and over. And we had this not so friendly cabbie, and Kels, I can't remember what he said, but the cabbie, I'm sitting right behind the cabbie. The cabbie reaches under his seat, grabs a handgun like this,
No.
and he says, and he turns and looks over his shoulder at me. And he says, "I suggest your friend closes his mouth now." And I was like, "Oh, actually, we're getting out at this next gas station." I was like, and I went whack, and I smoked Kells. I'm like, "Dude, shut your mouth." I'm like, oh.
Ah, jeepers. He lived in the other apartment complex from us when we were dating. So I heard the stories they would have their life going on in their apartment complex, and we kind of had ours. And he had fun playing the game, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
He had fun.
What a beauty.
And I mean, he was our Berkey was good, but like Paul Kelly might have been our playoff MVP that year, putting up 20 points going to the finals. Anyways, what a time.
Yeah,
You want a small world one for you now?
sure.
You're a captain in a lot of places. You were always the grown up in our apartment too, but you were the captain for Andrew Lord.
At RPI, yeah.
Yeah. So he was my coach, my player coach in Cardiff.
What was he? He was a year older than you, or a year younger than you, probably.
He was a couple years younger than me. He kept telling me what to do. He would tell me what to eat. He would body shame me.
He was, you know what? Lorda was a pretty serious guy about his stuff and whatever, but he could be an absolute beauty too.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah,
once you understood him, and
yeah.
he kind of he was pretty vigilant about all that stuff and whatever. He'd be like, "Oh, yeah, eat another pizza," whatever, type of guy. He's like, "Come on," he's like, "Take care of your life, get your life together," type of whatever. But then
But then as soon as he got off the rails, he was right off the
oh,
rails.
yeah. He was a funny guy. Yeah.
He was my player coach, so I didn't get to see that side of it, but I saw it a couple times. I'm like, I know exactly who you were before you were the coach.
I looked out for him a bit too, because he was
He'd get a bit rammy, wouldn't he?
I was I think a junior at RPI and he was playing for the Vernon Vipers where I had played my junior too. So when he kind of came in or whatever, he like at Christmas time he'd stay with us at college when they closed the dorms and whatever. And like, yeah, I loved Lordo. He was a beauty.
Well, small world though is like he means a lot to me. He's the first coach in pro hockey that made me an assistant captain. Hey, maybe it's because I was 2 years older than him. But it only took me 10 years. I finally got a letter, buddy.
You
Someone
were,
finally accepted me for me.
yeah. Exactly, Wally. That
But he
you earned it.
also Cardiff, him and Todd, the GM there, like the Devils brought me back for a Wally night, and it was Lordo that was the coach there, and I sat in his coach's room before that game and stood there naked and got spray painted, and then did the pregame speech as had the mascot head on, naked, spray painted as a devil, with my buddy's name and number on the back, and then came in and I asked everybody if they remembered when hockey was fun, but I was shouting at them naked, spray painted, and then they went out and won, you know. But so yeah, Lordo and I know each other. So when I got hurt, my career was over, and it was done. The doctors won't let me play anymore. Lordo was always so serious once he was the coach. So then I became the fun pregame speaker to like let
There you
everybody
go.
relax and have fun before the game, you know.
Yeah.
You need that, you know.
Well, didn't you sort of finish off in
Cardiff.
England and Cardiff League or whatever?
Yeah, I finished in Cardiff. Yeah. That's where it was over. But let's get into you here, okay? We got to get into this instead of just talking about Dayton, Ohio, man. You did a lot of stuff, sir. Last Dayton story though. Do you remember the start of the season when we first got back in contact, and then I sent you because the Dayton Bomber fans gave us a huge binder with all the pictures and articles from the year. And then when I got back in contact with you, I went down to that binder and I took pictures of the pictures that are in it and sent them to you. And most of them that have us together are me, you, and Ryan Reed, Reader, who is a beauty. We
Yeah.
went to the meet and greet with the fans at some bar, and we really I let them know I was there.
Yeah.
Some of those pictures are outrageous, you
Oh
know?
gosh.
Can't
Yeah.
believe I wasn't as grown up as I am now. Anywho, that was a fun meet and greet, you know? Um, anywho, do you remember the Major League video thing we did? Because I was just watching Major League with my son in there. Do you remember when we did a video like we were Major League and everybody had a thing to say and we skated off the screen? And
Oh
then
yeah.
at the end it said, we're the Bombers. We're your underdogs, just like Major League.
Wasn't that right before the playoffs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check YouTube, bud. It's out there. It's still
Is it
there.
out there
It's
for
like the
real?
only thing you can find from that season. If you look up Dayton Bombers from that year, that's the only thing you can find is that ridiculous
Went
ad.
to the league finals, but that's the only thing you can find.
That's the only thing you can find. That's how old we are. How old are you? 42? I didn't write it down. Do you imagine how
Yeah,
bad
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
research team was? I write down Enderby, BC, and I don't write down your flipping age. Be better, Walton. So you're in Enderby right now?
I moved back here. Well, pretty much after I finished in Japan. That was 2015. Moved back here permanently. So it's where I grew up. I don't know, close to family. Got a special cabin. What do you call them in Ontario? Lake houses or
Cottage?
cottages? Cottages. We
What do
got
you
a
call
cabin
them?
over there that's
Cabin.
kind of the cabin's my special place out there. So I had to be back around here and be around family and all that fun stuff. I had a lot of friends that were still here. I mean, you know the drill, right? I
I
mean,
do.
so
Yes.
yeah, no, it's great, and I had a good. I in my last 4 off seasons, I kind of started planning for the whole transition to the afterlife of hockey, and there
Because
was
you're smart.
I'll say a young company that one of my buddies older brothers that used to like coach me, he was an engineer and he was one of the partners in the company, and I called him up. I'm like, hey, I want to start using my brain for something or whatever. And when you're playing overseas, like I mean, you're not playing till like June, like we were with the Dayton Bomb Squad, right? Like you're done. Like I would work from April 1st till like second or third week of August with them, and like we did like sawmilling automation stuff, and um, I'd be going to sawmills and keeping up with my workouts and stuff, and then skating in the summer, and then they would let me go for another year, like back to Japan or to Italy or at that point. Um, And, so, and then, but I did that for 4 off seasons
Were you working at all while you're gone?
when I was overseas.
Yeah.
They would call me sometimes and just get me to do like some CAD stuff and whatever when they were in a pinch, like, you know, um,
What'd you take at RPI?
I studied mechanical and aerospace engineering.
Mechanical and aerospace.
Dual degree, yeah. It was literally I was just gonna do mechanical engineering after my first year. I think the offering with the program was like you basically only had to take, was it 8 more credits or something? Basically 2 more classes than the regular engineering program.
And then you got both.
And but all your electives were basically chosen for you, and everything was kind of, it was just an integrated engineer mechanical, and then all like, instead of being able to take psychology as your fluff class or whatever, I had to take like, fluid dynamics or something, like with that program. But I was like, well, it's really only 2 more classes. I'm like, well, I guess I'll do it or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's smart way to transition out because a lot of guys don't have a plan. I still see it nowadays. Buddies of mine that have played and they're not sure what they're doing next. But a lot of guys, the further they go down the hockey path, there's no way out of it once they get into it, right? They become the next coaches.
Well, and literally how it worked was, I worked those 4 off seasons. The company was quite new, and at when I first started, only like 4 or 5 employees. By the time I was like, and I knew my last season in Japan that I was like how you probably felt the same thing. And we're like, after you were done practice, it was like my hips are so sore. I just all I do is I'm gonna lay on the couch for 2.5 hours. We're like, the wife wants to go for a walk. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll scrape myself up. Like I was like, I felt beat like an old horse, right? And I was like, I knew. And luckily, the company had grown to about like 8 or 9 employees, and they're like, "Hey, we're getting bigger now. Whatever, you've got some sawmilling experience stuff, and you're good with people, and you've been around a lot of teams. Like, hey, do you want to be the general manager?" And I was like, "Well, make me an offer." I'm like, and I kind of knew in my mind and body, I'm like, it's time. And we had our daughter in Japan for our last year. So that before that last season, like that was a whole new spin on things. Like, I mean, you had
Yeah.
your kids overseas, right?
Yeah.
Like you go to the airport and you checked in. I mean, like my dad dropped us off at the airport. He had an 8 foot box on his long box pickup. We had it just full of gears, like strollers and car seats and whatever. Like when we checked
I had a
in at the
lot of hockey
airport,
bags, strollers, dogs. Yeah.
like it was like a 20 foot area at the check-in counter when we checked in. I was like, oh my gosh, this is next level. But it was a cool experience having a kid overseas there. I mean, she was just whatever, 3 months, 5 months old at the time when we went, but so she was still a pretty baby, and not too.
We have so much to talk about tonight. Jeepers creepers. Oh my gosh. It's really actually hurting my brain. That's like, man, we
It's
may
a good
not
thing
go
I'm
out to
on
sleep
Pacific
tonight.
time and you're on
Seriously.
Eastern time.
Yeah, no, I'll be fine. Um, um, I was talking to the Asian League right near the end of my career when we had our son was about a toddler, and I ended up going to Cardiff instead of there. They chose a different guy over me, but I was always curious what it would have been like taking our son there, and my wife was pregnant. Like we would have been having a kid there,
Yeah.
right?
Because how old are your kids now? Like they're
11 and
okay. So they would have been, so your son is the oldest, and he would have been like 3 years older than mine. So he would have been like
we're hockey guys. I got a 2012 and a
yeah,
2015. Come on,
okay.
you
There we
know?
go. Yeah. That would have been a bit different because, like I said, we were packing a baby around with us that we
Yeah.
didn't need to worry about like integrating, her into society that much and whatever, right? Like everybody just walk around and be like, oh, look, hey, look at the little Caucasian by baby, and like, oh, so cute in Japan, right? Like kawaii is what they'd say. So.
So you played 5 years in Japan. So we're just gonna bounce around, I guess. We're not going
Okay, we're
chronologically.
back at I
Where
thought
are
we were
we?
at
Where do you want to
RPI.
go?
Aren't we at RPI with Andrew Lord?
No, then we skipped the Vernon Vipers. I don't know. Where are we?
Okay. Okay, we'll start at the beginning. Go back to the Vernon
Okay, we're
Vipers.
back at home now. We're way
We're back
back
at
in
home.
Enderby. So anyways, you go to the Vernon Vipers. Is that close to home then? And that's where Andrew Lord played too?
Well, yeah, 25 minutes south of me.
So
The
it's kind of like your home team.
Okanagan Valley, almost, yeah. Yeah, I started with we had a junior B team in my local town here called the North Okanagan Kings, and I played, I think, like 20 games. And you talk about like the breaks you get like somewhere along your career and whatever. I remember that I think what happened, the reason I got called up to that team in Vernon was I think one of the D man on the team was screwing around with the coaches or assistant coaches like stepsister or something. And so they traded him away, like to
Yeah,
Saskatchewan or
that's a
something.
bad idea, buddy.
And
Yeah.
and you think you're like that's how I'm like, and I got ring, it's like, oh well, yeah, you want to come play for the Vipers the rest of the year? I'm like in December or whatever. I'm like, okay. I'm
Yeah.
like, and that's how it goes. I mean, second game there, and I mean the Vipers at the time they had won the national championship the year before, so it was like, whoa! I'm like, I get to be 20 minutes from home and play for a team
And
that won the
for
national championship the year before. Like, I mean, I played 2 games in the BCHL, and RPI already was talking to me. I'm like it was just like
is
there
that
was like
right? Vernon
12.
was that well known or what?
Oh yeah, we led the league in scholarships every year. Like we probably had 12 guys every 10, 12 guys every year getting scholarships.
Huh.
Yeah, like other players in the league would be like, you go to the All-Star game and whatever. I mean, they'd be like, how'd so and so on your team get a scholarship already? We're like, well, we played for the Vernon Vipers. I'm like,
Yeah.
the
Well,
coach was
it
a master
matters.
of players, and it was you just turning players over and kept getting new recruits that were awesome, right? So
One thing I've started to notice just in maybe my own brain is like Clance teaching us how to hockey and where a bunch of Dayton Bombers went in our careers from there is I think coaching really, really, really matters. It's like there's a reason why the same NCAA programs have this, they're the same teams that are pumping out pro hockey players because the pro teams trust the coach that is there and trust that they have taught them right the details, the little things, how to play hockey the right way. And it's like that in every league. And I'm guessing the Vernon Vipers had somebody that was pumping out guys that when they showed up were ready to play hockey.
yeah, and the Vernon Vipers had, I'll say, like, they were like there were players that there was lots of players that went to BU. There was lots of players that went to RPI. There was lots of guys that went to Omaha, Nebraska. Where like it seemed like you saw that probably your school
Oh,
and
there's the pipelines. We were Western Michigan and Niagara and St. Lawrence.
yeah, yeah, no, and and I know like all um the Cornell guys, they got all their players from a team in BC on the coast called the Nine Clippers or whatever. Like they trusted that program. They had a good deal with I'm coach with, and they trusted that they were getting a quality player when he came there, right?
Well, and then they're trusting the word of mouth too of the coach saying, "Hey, yeah." And it's amazing when you start looking around and the research team gets hot when people get in your shed. The people that know each other, it's like,
Yeah,
did you
big time.
did yeah, yeah, it matters.
Yeah. Hey, I got a question. What was his name?
You have a
Jake.
question for me? Nobody ever has questions for me. Jake Morissette.
You played with Jake Morissette. I was gonna say a Jake. What was it, Jake? He was a rookie when I was in my last year in Vernon, but I'm pretty sure. No, he went to Michigan Tech. I think he went to Western Michigan. Never mind. You
Mm,
played with Jake Morissette in Cardiff as well,
yeah, Lordo was his coach.
and they were like, I think they were roommates in like
Yeah, and he made him the
divorce.
captain then too when
Oh,
after I
did he?
left. Yeah. Gotta have your brother's back, man.
Did
But
Jake Morissette? Did he ever do his Bob Cole impression for you?
I'm pretty sure he has. Yeah, no, like he's a
Phenomenal.
funny dude, man, and
Quiet
he's
after.
quiet, but he's witty. He's a smart little bugger.
Yeah, yeah.
He was always the guy that was like opposite of me. It'd be like I'd be rolling in with the boys like 5 minutes before we had to be there, and he would be in his workout stuff, like running around, jumping around, doing like warming up, I think they call it. Um, and we would be like, we're here. He was a pro. He's a pro and he's a gamer. And he would block any shot, man. He was a great leader on our team.
I love Mo.
Yeah.
He was beauty.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I
Played
haven't
in
even talked to him yet.
played in Vernon for 2.5 years.
So when did you choose RPI and why? Sorry for the hard questions.
No, that's okay. So I didn't actually commit until the say the fall of my second year. Well, like I mean I started in January 1st, I'll say. Talked to a couple schools the rest of that season. And then over the summer and into the next fall, like the next fall, things heated up where it was like I was getting phone calls from. I flew down to Ohio State, flew down to Cornell. Uh, I didn't fly down to Princeton, but I'll say with the Ivy League schools, like I
You're like
always knew
smart.
I wanted to do engineering, and I think my mom she was a big school lady. Like she was all about making sure I was keeping up with everything and
Yeah,
pushing me along academically and whatever.
I
Um,
understand.
but it was like, I mean, I was getting so like peppered on like Mondays. They could always call you like once a week or whatever. I'm like, I finally just got like so flustered, but about trying to make a decision. I mean, that was so hard. I'm like, how do you pick any one of these schools? I'm like, well, I flew down to Ohio State. I'm like, well, this would be sick, right? Big Ten school, to do whatever. I mean, flew you in, 17,000 seat arena. Dressing room was like sick oak stalls, and what they totally did like the blue chips thing, like where like they cleaned out the whole dressing room and like just had my jersey hanging in the stall and
That was
whatever.
it.
Yeah.
So when
And
I
it
went to
was
Western Michigan, what they did for me was at pregame skate or whenever it was after pregame skate,
yeah.
they set up all the stalls for the game, and I had a stall, and they had number 10 Walton and the whole deal set up for the
Ooh.
game. Yeah, it got me.
But you know what was the brutal thing for it was a week after I flew down there. So I watched them play the Michigan game, which was sick.
I
Right.
watched Western Michigan play Michigan.
And
They know how to trick you, don't they?
and I'm like, yeah, went to a party out all night, whatever. But the week after I got home, the captain became academically ineligible. I was like, well, they told me that I wasn't going to be allowed to take more than I think 3 classes a semester. But I don't know. I feel like they said they would honor your scholarship for 5 years, even though you can only play for 4.
So
I'm like,
you wouldn't
well,
be
I don't want
graduated
to come
after
back
four.
to
Yeah.
Ohio State to finish my degree. Like,
No, we're hockey
just
players.
because you guys won't like me to take a 4th class every semester or whatever, right? And the captain became academically ineligible. So I was like talking to my parents. I'm like, well, this ain't really a good sign. I'm like, fly down to Cornell. Cornell was sick. I mean, I
It
don't
is
know.
a sweet barn too.
There's I mean, I don't know. You got to play out in some Western sick barns in NCAA, but I mean, you played at Cornell.
I did.
Like, I
Yeah.
mean, that
I've
was an
done.
environment, man. I don't know if you can like replicate, especially being more of a rivalry school, like with us in our conference, like when I was at RPI, like that
Oh
was
yeah.
an intense place to play, and those fans were crazy. I mean, like chanting everything under the sun. I remember racing back to a puck into our zone with a guy like chasing me over my shoulder, and I slammed skates with him as I was skating it, and I flew into our own goalpost from like 15 feet out, just going as fast as I could be going. And 4,000 fans, all students yelling, learn to skate, learn to skate, learn to skate, all in unison. I'm like, this is hilarious. I'm like, you know, I mean,
Oh man, their NCAA arenas, like for kids in Canada that haven't seen it or
I know.
wherever they're, like it is so different and so much fun. Like I remember in Maine they got the band up top and I was doing warm up and it's like 5,500 people just going crazy. But the fans, if you hit the crossbar and go up into the band section, they would throw the pucks at you. So
Yeah.
then I was like, well, if you're throwing pucks at me, um, like I'm gonna go in and pretend to roof it, and it just may head up there too, right? It's like you want to play this game, but like the NCAA man is the West. I mean, did you even play at Western Michigan?
We didn't go out to Western Michigan.
Oh, the Lawson Lunatics, man. So that's my dream this year I'm the head coach of the under 13 Kincardine Canucks. I want to take them to Western Michigan to see the Broncos play. And I think for those kids to see that and have a weekend away, it'd be really fun.
Yeah. No, that's even the stuff like where there's like 14, 15, 16-year olds, all you talk to like these parents that are maybe going a little bit too overboard on planning their hockey child's future, and oh, should my kid, I'm so worried about getting drafted in the my son getting drafted in the WHL Bantam draft and whatever. No. I'm
It
like,
starts younger than
I'm like,
14, 15, 16
I'm
though.
like, if your kid knew what any school in the NCAA was pretty much like to go there, you're around tons of young people,
You're
free
having the funnest
education,
4 years of your life.
funnest 4 years of your life. I mean, amazing stadiums, amazing schedule, and wow, I mean, girls.
Well, and it's for hockey wise, it's like they have much opportunity to make it as any other league out there. They're all watching the NCAA nowadays. The problem I find is that the USA has enough of their own now. It's like when I went to Western Michigan, there was a lot of Canadians, and before me there was even more Canadians, and now it's less and less. And there's not nearly as many Canadians in the NCAA, but it's because they're good at hockey down there now.
yeah. I'm also a little bit scared for maybe like, you think about players like you and I that, we didn't do major junior,
Mm-hmm.
with this new rule that they're gonna potentially be implementing or whatever, where
They
I'm
can go
like,
back and forth.
that's gonna kill so many, you know, hockey careers of players like who are playing junior A and junior B and whatever, so much sooner now, and they're not even gonna get a chance to grow up to be men and whatever. I mean, if you got like 19 and 20-year-olds being allowed to go play NCAA after they've crushed 3 years with the Saginaw Spirit or the Kelowna Rockets, right?
It doesn't make sense to me to be
I
able
don't
to
know
do
either.
both. I I think they're two different things, and you have to choose which one you want to do because they're the different paths, and they're
I'm
both
totally
good.
with you on that.
I don't think it would make any sense to be able to just switch back and forth, but it was weird that NCAA kids could switch to the OHL, but OHL can switch to NCAA. So I guess if I'm thinking out loud, oh, again, right?
Yeah,
What are you gonna do? Poster picks. Is that a moose?
that was an elk. I think I sent
An
you.
elk? How
Yeah.
do you track that
You
thing
know what?
down and
You know
get it?
what? That's a little secret passion of mine that like I love the outdoors, Wally. I mean, that's a big thing why I moved back here. Like I mean my hidden passions are fishing and hunting. So
And we didn't do any of that in Dayton.
no, but I missed it. Yeah, no.
Well, we might have had B dubs. There might have been like a fishing game
Mine,
we played.
mine might have been cougar hunting, but
Yeah. I better not bring up that story that just popped in my head. Um, yeah. Okay. So, that is, but like you hunted an elk, so like that must have been hard.
those are super cool. I mean, it is this interaction with this big animal, and like when they're in their rutting season and you bugle for them and they come right in and they'll be like 10 yards away from you, shredding a tree, you know. It's such a rush, man. Like it's to interact with it like that. I don't know. Me and my buddies go away to the Kootenays, this eastern British Columbia, like in the Rockies, and we go every fall to go on a guy's hunting trip for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. So yeah, we have a great time.
Yeah, no, the
I,
people that
I
are
mean,
into hunting are into hunting.
yeah, no, I mean it is a blast. It's like the closest thing to being like back in a, in the
The
dressing
old,
room.
yeah, oh yeah, the boys away for the week and a half. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
You get a boys away, it's boys away. Yeah. What's the picture? It was in email. I didn't have much time. I couldn't zoom in. There's a car upside down and boats in a parking lot.
Oh yeah, I was hoping you were gonna ask about that one. So if we're gonna go that place, that was in Japan after our second season when the earthquake and tsunami happened.
You were there then?
I was there then. That was a day before we were gonna start our league finals.
The day before you're gonna start your league finals, the
Yeah,
tsunami hit.
I was in my skates in the dressing room when it happened. We had another import from out your way. His name was Cole Jarrett. How did you know of him or hear of him? He played in Germany a lot, in Austria, and a bit.
I actually
He was a Sioux guy.
he would not remember this one bit, not for a second, but like I do know the name, and I played against his brother Patrick in Germany a lot. But in under 17 for Team Ontario tryouts, the final one there with like the top dogs, he was the one that slashed me in the arm that like I couldn't play good anymore because I had like an elbow on the wrong side.
Sorry, I brought it up.
No, it's fine.
He was a
It just
slasher.
hurt. I remember it hurting. I was like 16. It hurt. But no, I remember him. He was a tough player. He was good. But
Yeah,
he was on your team too. Yeah, I know him. Know the
yeah,
name. Don't know him. But Patrick Jarrett's a beauty. So I'm guessing his brother is.
yeah. So you want to get into that right now?
The tsunami?
Yeah, earthquake stuff.
Yeah, I guess so. We got a lot to talk about. I didn't know we were talking
Yeah.
about this too. I thought that
Well,
was like a movie scene.
no,
Or
that was nuts. Our hometown was on the northern tip of the main island in Japan. Um, but we were down the island about half the way to Tokyo. So like I'll say 5 hours from our hometown. We were about to start our league championship finals. And it was we traveled on the bus all day and then we had practice at 3 in the afternoon. So I was literally just tying my skates up and I turn and look at Cole Jarrett. I'm like, because you know how they split up, they give you two rooms when you're on the road, right? Like the D-man and goalies are in one room
yeah,
and the
forwards
forwards
are in
in
the
the other,
other.
right? So the D-man or whatever, Cole was a D-man too. And I'm like, Colesy, I'm like, do you feel that? So when you get earthquakes, like we were used to earthquakes being in Japan because there's lots.
There's a lot of earthquakes.
Yes, there is. Because there's like four, I think, tectonic plates that kind of all come together there, about 200 kilometers off the coast where we were situated. And so, like, my wife and I, we were sitting there watching TV on the couch, and we'd feel like maybe a 4 or 5, on the whatever Richter scale or whatever. We would put our hands on the wall, and you could feel the wall flexing, and we'd be like, okay, it's not that bad. And you could feel the springs underneath your cushions in your couch, like you be moving.
Hmm.
And so like I felt the bench starting to flex right after I finished tying my left skate. Hey? And I'm like, Colsey, you feel that? And he's like, yeah. And then it started to really rumble. I was closest to the door to go out towards the ice. I opened the door. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna stand in this doorway. Cause I mean, like, it's just something you learn as a kid and whatever, right? And I looked out towards the ice. The Zamboni was out there. The lights were starting to swing and smash in the arena, and stuff was like falling down off the ceiling or whatever. I'm like, I'm not standing here. In my skates, I sprint out. Like the Zamboni door was open about 20 feet away from me to the left. I sprint out towards the ice level, and I'm like, I'm not staying in this building. I'm like, stuff's like falling apart here. I sprinted out in my skates into the parking lot, running out there. And then before I realized I was actually in my skate blades, I'm like, and then I started crawling across the parking lot, trying to get away from the building.
Because it's the league finals.
Yeah. And I was looking at this neighboring like rec center right that shared the same parking lot. I'm like, it was like a layer cake atrium, like of all of glass and stuff. And I'm like, I'm seeing this thing twist like this. And I'm like, holy smokes, if this thing drops, there's going to be glass bullets shooting everywhere. So I just tucked my head between my knees and was like in a tuck in the parking lot with all my hockey equipment and just
Where
waited.
was the rest of your team?
They stayed in there. I mean, it was crazy. Like where I had run out, there, like where the beams connected into the building, like there were pieces of concrete like that big that had fallen down. Like I was stepping over them when I went back into the dressing room after the earthquake was done.
And you were so with
Because it was a 9.1 earthquake. Like that was nuts. Like
which caused the tsunami.
so we had a sick bus in when I played there that had like, and we could get live television feeds like via satellite and whatever. So they made us just grab our bags quickly and go out to our bus and take our gear off and whatever and sit in the bus in the middle of the parking lot because we didn't know what to do or where to go. There was like big holes in the middle of the pavement in the road, like 3 meters wide, like block, where sinkholes and big drops in the elevation of pavement and whatever. So we're like, well, where are we even going? So we take off all our gear, but because the what do they call it, epicenter or whatever was like a couple 100 kilometers off the coast, it takes some time for the wave to ramp up. Like I think it took after the earthquake, I think it took like 11 minutes or something for the wave to hit, landfall. But we're sitting in the bus watching, like flicking through all the channels of Japanese live television. There's a aftershock earthquake probably every 3 or 4 minutes that were like shaking the bus. There were something like 240 aftershock earthquakes there in the next 48 hours after that big one happened. But we're sitting there.
Aftershock earthquakes.
Yeah.
So like little ones.
Yes, but like not even little ones. Like when you have an earthquake that big, and I mean there was earthquakes that were darn near as big as like the ones that were like in San Francisco that were considered aftershocks to this big one. Like stuff was shaking and it didn't stop shaking for like a couple days. Like it was so stressful. You're like, okay, here's another one. Oh boy, here's another. Here's another. Whatever. But we're sitting in the bus watching a live feed, and they had like a helicopter or something watching the wave come in from the Pacific and about to hit. And they had all these giant tsunami barriers that were just like looked like giant ski jumps where the water could rush up. I don't know if you've seen those before. It's kind of like, it almost looked like a half pipe, but they were like 40 feet tall concrete things to protect small villages and whatever on the coast. This wave, I can remember watching it hit live. It just went up like over, because we had driven by these like 40-foot high concrete barriers. It just hit that barrier and just went, and just like it was nothing. It just went over and just was like flooding. And we were watching this live, like on the TV. And I was like, cars just ripping, like whatever. Like it was crazy. So
That is crazy.
Yeah. So long story short, I mean, they actually deemed us co-champions of the league, and they called the season off, obviously.
Is that why you went to Italy the next year?
Yes.
There wasn't a
It was
league.
just, man, like, and after, like, the fallout of all that stuff was like, not to get too serious about that, everything, but it was so serious, right? Like, you don't know what how people react in a state of emergency. I mean, the Japanese people are like the most wonderful people on earth, like most respectful, like they never panicked through the whole situation. I'm like, you know, people in Canada or America would have been losing their marbles, stuff like, I mean, we were losing our marbles,
Yeah.
like in a state of that time. We were 50 kilometers from that Daiichi nuclear plant when it all happened. Our hotel was deemed unfit for us to go back to and stay. So they took us out to a traditional hotel in the countryside. They pull us into a gas station, like in a state of emergency. What people do is they go and buy all the gas as fast as possible so they can heat their homes and vehicles and blah, 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 whatever, right? They buy all the food and carbs, protein, whatever they could. Like, people naturally look out for themselves, right? So we're like way behind the eight ball, and like we didn't have a place to stay. They pull our bus into a gas station. We're like, the only thing on the shelves were chips and like beer. So like the boys walk out like this, and we're like, well, I guess we're going to our hotel room with all this stuff, right? And we sat there and watched the news, and like the only English speaking channel there was CNN. So you can imagine what that was like. I mean, how much trust you could put into what information was, valid and what was just making news and whatever. But like they're telling us on the CNN, they're like, hey, everywhere within 35 kilometers of the Daiichi nuclear power plant should be evacuated right now. We're like, me and Cole Jarrett from Sault Ste. Marie are like, hey, we're 50 kilometers away from that place. Like, let's get out of here. Like, I mean, what are we waiting for? And we stayed like a night or two. And Cole's like, okay, I'm just getting a rental car. I'm driving home all the way up the island to be with because he had a wife and daughter. I think, did they have 2 kids there at the time? Anyways, whatever. He's like, I'm getting back to them. So they finally like felt peer pressure enough to like, okay, we'll get the bus going and we'll start heading back up to our home. Now, the trouble was you couldn't get enough fuel for our bus to drive the 6 hours home because there was no fuel left because everybody went and bought it right after the event happened, right? So
You had
we had
no
to take,
gas to get the bus back.
so we had to call like and make these strategic stops all the way, and we just did this big S up the island, and so we could hit this gas station and get 50 more liters of diesel, and then we could go another couple hours this way and time it, and we get another 30 liters of diesel or whatever they would promise, right? Because and so we like got back, and so that picture that I sent you was, like it took these giant squid boats that were like 120 feet long, and it just like took them from the river, and like they were like pushed like 400 or 500 feet like inland. Like you'd be driving down the road and there'd just be like a giant squid boat and all these squid fish hooks with like all these 100 barbs on them, like all over the street and whatever. People just drive around them. We're like,
I didn't know what I was looking at in that picture.
yeah. So, anyways, that was.
So then you got out of there all right then, and
we were all right. I mean, our apartment and everything was up on the hillside in a newer part of town. We had, good apartments there that weren't close to the water, so everything was safe, and our families were good and all that fun stuff. But like it was, I mean, and then we couldn't even get flights to get home. Like, I mean, it was a battle. It was stressful. Like my wife, after we got home, she said, she's like, I don't know if I'm ready to go back there. I'm like, the team loved us there. We loved the team. We loved the people. Money was good. I mean, but she's like, we should try something different or whatever for a year. So yeah, that's when we went to Italy.
well, yeah, that makes sense. Jeepers.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been an experience.
Yeah, it was crazy, man.
Well, we'll go to a later note then. You did go to Italy and played with a couple shed guys, Mac Faulkner and Chris Blight.
Did you have folks on here?
I haven't yet, no.
Oh, you should. What a
I
beauty.
should, yeah. Well, it's interesting when these guys have testimonials and like who they bring back in the UK, because it's guys that played 10 years on a team and they bring back their like teammates they feel, I don't know how they do it, but I saw he was invited back to Cardiff again, and I've been at a testimonial with him. So he's been back twice, and then another guy that keeps getting invited back is Tyson Marsh, which played on that same team right around then too.
I
But
know Marshy too, because Falks would. I think he was playing in Ravensburg or somewhere.
Blader was.
What's that?
Blader did.
No, at that time, Marshy. When I played with
Oh, he
Falks,
played in Garmisch.
Light was on our team in Ritten in Italy. Yeah, he was in Garmisch. That's where. But he came down to hang out with us for several weekends. He was a good shit.
Oh yeah, he
Um,
is.
but Falks is like he's one of those guys that I'm like I don't know what's he doing now, but I thought I'm like that was a guy that like you could put him in a room and you know how we were in Dayton with that like after the game we would when we had that little game where we'd go to the restaurant or we go to the pub or whatever and somebody talk hockey or whatever and you'd be like Frank hockey talk take a drink and whatever and then like mine would be like hockey talk Wally take a
Take a
drink.
drink.
We
No talking hockey.
There's no talking hockey
No
after.
shop.
But Mac, you take Mac and he could sit in a room and talk hockey for like 5 days straight about this player, that player. I know this player, and we cross paths here, and he played with his cousin and Bob. I'm like, I thought that guy would have been a GM of some team or whatever. Like,
Well, from what I understand, he's quite intelligent and everybody
oh, yeah,
seems to like him.
yeah, no, he was. He was witty too, but he was super fun.
You guys must have had a good time in Italy then.
We had a great group of imports there.
Yeah,
It's just the team was
not good enough. I saw you guys were in relegation.
we were not good enough, and it was the most stressful year of my hockey career.
My most stressful ones were when the team wasn't doing well in Europe. I mean, when the team's not doing well, how hard you take that personally just can eat you up.
And that's the part that people don't maybe understand that they just think it's like you know
They don't care enough. They're not trying hard enough. It's like it actually
so much
puts you.
more like I feel like it's just way more like a soccer environment, right? Like I mean we were getting our jobs threatened like
Oh
every
yeah,
2 weeks, right? Like it's like, oh, we're not gonna pay you this week because you guys are in seventh place and whatever. And I mean, we were like, what? Like, are you kidding me? I mean, like,
we signed a
we were
contract
getting
and we're
threatened
playing hard.
every 2 weeks, I swear. Like it was brutal like that. I mean, I understand it when you have um the European teams and like the Asian teams even more because you only had like 3 or 4 imports there. Like if you're an import and you don't perform, like it can put a lot of heat on you, right? Like,
Oh, it doesn't take long, man. It can. There's so many guys that last half a season in Europe. It's rare to last years.
yeah. And like my mom, I mean, your family probably the same. Like our own team website would like chirp us imports on the website, like, oh, Ethan Graham, you played against him at Michigan State, maybe? He was one of my deep partners there or whatever. He's like, yeah, Ethan Graham and Brad Farynuk, and we're like, yeah, the written sport they lost 5-2 last night. It was pretty much lost all because of them. We're like
There was 100% times I was really happy I never knew German. But um it was amazing to me seeing a town switch from going to a town where you win it all your first year, you have money, you have a good enough team, you have brothers for life, you think you're going to play there forever, and then by the end and you have no money and money talks. But then the fans treat you like the team still has money and you're like, well, like, do you guys not get it? Like, we're not good enough. Like, our players aren't good enough to win. So why don't you just support us because you're our fans? And then when you have money again, why don't we bring in better players and win again?
yeah.
Ugh.
No, I know. That was interesting. So like, I mean, by the end of that season, we had like all these plans to like go rip around Europe, and I mean, there's oodles of things you can do there, right? Like, I mean, but we were like, we're just gonna do like 4 days in Paris, and then we're getting home. We're going home. Like, I was so stressed out. I'm like, massage therapist would even be like pushing in my stomach. She's like, you carry so much tension. I'm like, yeah, I do. I'm like, like she's like, you seem so tense and locked up and whatever. I'm like, yeah, because I've been getting my life threatened here for the last, my job,
Um,
my
brings
well-being.
back memories for me because I had it pretty cushy in Bietigheim. I mean, I was their guy. Even when we weren't doing well, I was the guy scoring goals, and they seemed to like me or whatever until they didn't. But then I switched teams to Hellbron in the second league there, and I have a baby. Like, I have a baby that season, and we're not having a good year, and I'm turning the page into being a dad and having to support a family, and then we're not doing well, and they brought in 3 Slovak imports, and they bring us imports before these 3 Slovaks come, and they say, so we're doing this because the team's not winning. We can't replace Germans. We can replace imports. If you don't play good, you're not playing. And then all of a sudden we had 8 imports and only 5 could play, I think. So we had 3 health bombs every game. Thankfully, I stayed out of it.
Yeah.
But like, I had never been so stressed in my life going to practice throughout the day. And I got a little baby and I like thought I had a hockey career going, and then all of a sudden they're threatening me to be a healthy scratch in the second league in Germany, and I'm like, what the hell happened here?
Yeah. That's where things like really got way more serious. You looked at stuff in a different light, right? Like, I mean, I found that in my last year in Japan, because we had my daughter there and whatever. It wasn't necessarily like, I mean, we didn't get threatened about our jobs and whatever. And the Japanese were, I mean, you got respect by giving it, in that place. And if you worked your butt off, and I mean, and you had to work your butt off. Like, training there was like you'd be playing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like, you'd be having timed 5 kilometer runs on like Wednesday. Like,
That's
it was
dumb.
it was hard work and whatever.
Well, that's
But
dumb.
I it was crazy. But like, I mean, people were. That's why we loved it in Japan. I'm like, it was a good thing. I mean, the team loved us. They treated us like gold. But that last year, once you threw having a child there, couple like you saw this where maybe overseas where players they didn't necessarily respect the game like North Americans do, where you saw some serious rodeo stuff, right? Like with people swinging their sticks around or taking strides 10 feet out of their way to plow somebody from behind or whatever. Like, you saw some crazy.
Yeah, I did.
In my last year in the Asia League, there was a Russian team that we'd have to go play
I
in
remember that.
Eastern Russia, Sakhalin, I think it was called. And we went up there, and I battled with a guy in a corner, this great big Russian guy. I mean, the Russian guys were way bigger than all of like our Japanese players or the Korean players in the league, right? But I'm battling with this older, he was a good player guy in the corner or whatever. I'm like, and I was kind of the only one that would have the balls to stick up again,
Yeah, get in there with them.
for our players and get in whatever. So we battled, muck it up in the corner, and the puck gets ripped around the ice for an icing call. Like, I loop out to center, like just on my swing back into the zone, like
Yeah.
10, 15 seconds after the whistle. And this guy comes and clotheslines me. And I go boom, boom. I hit his skull right on the back of the ice, right? Like right down, like I was like, and concussion. So they scrape me off the ice. You get to like, I mean, you start thinking about like your child and wife and family and stuff or whatever, but like outside of that arena, like the ambulance that they put me in, dude, was like a glorified, like it had to be like a 70s Volkswagen van converted to an ambulance. I mean, there was just wooden seats in it. They throw me in there, they drive me to what must have been like a retired army barracks. that was converted to a hospital. There wasn't even lights on at this place. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
And this is in Russia.
This is in Russia. And I'm like, so you got like, you're dealing with two different translators. You got your like English to Japanese, Japanese to Russian translators through this whole process, right? So you're like, okay, what quality information am I getting about my health, right? You pull up to this window, they slide the window open, check you in. I'm like, okay, get back in the Volkswagen van, I'll call it, ambulance. Drive me like 300 yards down this alleyway into some building that has like no lights on. Open this giant door, walk in. Like there's no people. Behind door number 2, they open a door and they're like, oh, there's an MRI machine. I'm like, what? I'm like, there's not even a sign in this building, but they got an MRI machine sitting right here. I'm like, okay, well, I guess score. Let's do this.
Let's hop in.
And I'm like, holy wow. But anyways, long story short, like that really made me think. I'm like, okay, I'm like, I got $1 here. I'm like, I'm 1 or 2 concussions away from it could be all over, right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Then
like,
it could be right
that put a new
scrambled.
twist. I mean, the other one was in Seoul, Korea that same year, earlier in the year. I blew up this kid in the corner. His skate came up and slashed me right here like this, right? Like 25 stitches outside, 15, like my tongue is like through my cheek, right? And same thing. I mean, like we get outside, the ambulance door was locked and nobody could even get. I'm like just pouring, like I had a swath down my jersey 3 feet long of blood. Like my white jersey was just solid red. And nobody could find somebody who had the key to unlock the ambulance.
But the ambulance people were there?
Yeah. And they couldn't get the back door open. I had to climb in my full hockey gear over basically the passenger seat of the ambulance into the back area. They take me to the hospital there. What happened? They put a couple stitches in there in the cheek and whatever. And then they're like, okay, well, we're waiting for another doctor. Apparently she's a plastic surgeon. She might not be gone. She was supposed to be done her shift, but she's going to come down. Now look, she goes to give me some freezing to do a bunch more sutures or whatever. And she pokes me in the face. So puts the freezing in, and then she drops the needle, stabs her own finger after it had been in my face.
Are we still in Russia?
Like, this is in South Korea now.
Okay, but that's still not home. You're in Japan. This is an interesting league.
Yeah, there was three Korean teams, 4 Japanese teams, and a Russian team, and 1 Chinese team.
And they were brutal. I remember seeing that.
Yeah, and so now they're bringing out the whole like blood work kit on me, like because they got to test me for HIV and everything under the face of the earth. Because make sure the doctor's safe because she stabbed herself in the finger. Meanwhile, again, we're doing the English to Japanese translator, Japanese to Korean translator. The whole conversations, right? I'm the Caucasian guy standing at 10 o'clock at night in full hockey equipment in the middle of the South Korean ER area, and there's just people looking at me like I'm a zoo animal, right? Just a swamp of blood down here like this,
right? In hockey gear, they're probably not used to that either.
Oh yeah, no. And so you do this translation thing for like 15 minutes with the doctors and whatever. In Korea, like it's a very Americanized Asian country. Like they've had a big US Air Force base there for whatever since the Korean War, right? Like but I was wondering, I'm like, well, we're doing this translation thing like over and over and having to repeat everything 97 times. This is going so slow. Finally, after about 15 minutes, the doctor says to me, oh, you speak English? And I'm like,
what? Are you serious?
I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, anyways, but those two things, like they put such a a big fear in my eyes as far as like when you started, we talk about the kids thing and whatever. Like I'm like, okay, I'm like, what is this all worth now? I'm like, I could be a vegetable and not have my brain anymore. Like,
Oh,
very
and
short life.
concussions are very scary. And
Yeah,
then, yeah. So what was the hockey like in that league? Like you said, you played, there's 4 Japanese, 3 Korean, and a Chinese team. I believe they were called the Dragons and were brutal because like
the
every,
Dragons.
when you're a hockey guy and you check out elite prospects or whatever, and then you see a team where every season every guy's like minus 50.
Well, it was like I think it was maybe like a government ran team, and um, they were just trying to like, I mean, grow the sport somehow, some way, right? You would have to go play them in different cities.
They
It
weren't
was
even in one city.
there was like we went to, I mean, there was a couple really like amazing places we went there.
You've lived quite the life since I knew you.
Yeah. There was a place called Harbin, which was a big like Northeast China winter city that like they had some amazing stuff there. Like you could like feed the Siberian tigers and whatever. Like it was crazy for like $3. And I mean, it was nuts. I mean, you saw some stuff in that place, man. Like people smoking in the arena. It was like the big haze of smoke. Like you get
Like
in
the
there.
old Dayton arena when we were playing for the Bombers.
Yeah. We'll wait for the
Sorry,
fog.
not the Dayton one, the Toledo one.
Well, we had to wait for the fog to clear in the Wright State arena, our home arena, that one game.
Oh,
And the
well,
pylons. Remember the pylons on the ice?
I remember when Florida came all the way from Florida and then wouldn't play us because our ice was too bad.
Yeah. They had a slab about 12 inches long right in front of their gate and bench that was just missing down the
Oh,
concrete.
sorry. Did you come all the way to Florida to play not in the Nutter Center? Uh, you must have mucked it up against so it's, I always find it a small world, and the reason the Asian League was so on my radar, other than you going there, was growing up playing spring AAA with Brock Radunsky.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh,
He's a legend over there.
he was the Korean legend. What did they had a nickname for him? What did they call him? Like the Canadian Beauty or something.
Right. Yeah, I think it was the Big Beauty or the Big Canadian Beauty or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up playing spring AAA with him. His old man was our coach, and great people. Yeah.
Well, he had a great gig there though, man. I mean, like Hollow was, I mean, they courted me to come play the one year or whatever, but I was pretty loyal to my Japanese team, and we loved it in Japan. I don't know if we'd go to Korea. When we go there, we'd go and play all 3 teams like 3 times. So we go there for like 2 weeks, couple stints every season. That I'm like,
You'd get to
I
know
didn't
it a
really
bit.
love Korea. I didn't really love the food near as much as Japan. I didn't really love the people as much as Japan. I mean, and I don't know. They were offering really good money to go there, and they were dangling the carrot at the time. Because in Japan, you can't get a Japanese passport without giving up your Canadian one, right?
Yeah, and you're not going
In
to do that.
Korea, you could as long
Both.
as you were there for 3 seasons, you could get your Korean passport, and they were dangling the, well, we're going to be hosting the Olympics in 5 years. You could play for the Korean national team. I'm like, well, that would pretty cool, but I'm like, 5 years is a long ways from now. Like,
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
there
saw,
are guys
I
that did
almost
it.
went there, but yeah, anyways, whatever. The rest is history.
You ever heard of Matt Dalton?
Yeah.
He's the
We beat,
goalie over there now that plays for Korea, and he's from just down the road here and
is
came
he
to the
still
ship.
playing there?
He did last year. I haven't talked to him about
Holy
next year.
cannoli. We beat them in the finals my last year when I retired. But that was the other part that was kind of, I mean, you had that same thing, I mean, overseas where you played too, where the imports could get, passports where you had 12 guys from Toronto that, and 7 of them had Italian passports when you were there, and so they had 12 imports on the team. I mean, the Korean team had like 6 imports to like R3 or whatever, but we still beat them in the final. So we were super pumped about that. And they
You
even
would be.
they were the
Yeah.
only team in the league that had an import goalie too. And so everybody in the league was like the managers and stuff, like they were like, there's kind of like an unwritten code here that nobody's supposed to get an import goalie,
Right.
but they did it. So
Well, and that's hockey. You got to try and win.
yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
But that's pretty cool. You guys beat them. Because yeah, I had heard of made like there was money over there, and then there was teams that were paying a lot, teams that were paying normal, and I did try to go there. I did a couple
Well, your
times.
original question was how is the hockey and like the players
Yeah,
uh players like players on my team, they could fly around, but they were like kind of like practice, they were just rockets around the ice and whatever. I mean, it was
but
not a puck out.
positionally was not.
But then when it came to like, I'll say getting your nose dirty, getting in the corner, stripping a puck,
They'd
the
give her.
aggressive parts of the game, no, you didn't see the same fire and the emotion, in my opinion, that I'll say a North American would potentially bring. I actually, in my first couple of years, I would like, I felt like, again, like we kind of referred to ourselves, Steve Munn and Bruce Mulheron, guy who played in the England League or whatever there, but we referred to ourselves as like the zoo animals because like sometimes after games, like we'd be getting mad or like frustrated because we got given our fourth minor penalty of the game and whatever, like that we just felt like we were like zoo animals in a cage putting on the spectacle for like all the fans because it was like
You
like
guys were mucking it up a little bit
yeah.
harder than the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? Our team was a first year team when I went over there. And
Is that
like by
right? You were there
our
right from the
second year,
start.
like it was like we had grown so much. And I mean, I was really proud of like our team by the time I left. Like, I mean, they understood how to be professional hockey players. Japanese players were a little bit smaller, faster than the Korean players. Korean players were a bit like bigger, noticeably stronger, I'll say in the corners, more aggressive. Russia was just, I don't know. You just want to try and have a good start and get a 1 or 2 goal lead, and they'd all start yelling at each other and smashing sticks over the boards and whatever.
Yeah.
And then China was just a gong show. It'd be like 10-1 after the second, and really we'd be planning on what hotel bar we're gonna go to that night. Like
That makes sense. And I find it interesting. Every country, every place you go to, people play hockey differently. But I find that where you're born and raised kind of makes you who you are, and people play hockey like their personalities and like who they are. You know what I mean? Anywho, that's what I was thinking. So jeepers, we're all over the place. One guy, because I did check you out because we were roommates and you're my brother, and we almost won it all. There's a guy on your team though every year that would put up some numbers, and I loved his name. Go Tanaka.
Go Tanaka, absolutely. It's
Great
like me,
name,
you
great
like Major
numbers.
League, right?
Huh?
Because you like the movie Major League, Taka Tanaka.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go Tanaka was one of those guys, but he played. I think he played a little bit in with was it like Cincinnati or somewhere. He had a quick stint in North
Is
America.
that right?
Yeah, and in Germany.
Oh, in my old honey hole.
Or maybe just went to Germany. I can't remember if he was in North America or not. But so he got the big picture, right?
Yeah.
But he was this little guy, but like just like the super pro small guy, just played the game right. Like, he was kind of like a Joe Cullen. That would be like an absolute good
Yeah.
comparison for him, right? Like
He would Jojo, I played against him in Germany, like I guess it would have been the next year. And we went and visited him in Garmisch, and he always played on the right side of the puck. He always made the right play, and he always played hard and on the right side of the puck. I liked him. Okay, here's one for you. This is serious stuff. You were the captain of the South Carolina Stingrays. You guys won it all. Your coach was Jared Bednar. That's pretty cool because then like you were the captain for him. You won the championship for him. And then he won the Stanley Cup for Colorado.
Yeah, but and then in between he won the AHL championship. What was that with Lake Erie, right?
Oh, I don't know about that.
So
I only know
whatever.
about you.
Anyways, you know what? I mean, Bedsy is just a guy as a coach all along that he just got it. Like he was again one of those guys. Like he wasn't as much of a detail and a teacher guy like as Clancey was,
Yeah.
but he had such a good grasp on, like, I'll say, just hanging at the 10 or 20,000 foot level, managing the team, managing the bench, like never for like I get pretty steamed up if something didn't go my way or whatever. I mean, never got a penalty I deserved in 27 years of hockey, right? But
No.
like he would nip that like so quick on the bench. Like he's like, nope, that atmosphere doesn't come on our bench, He'd be like,
Yeah.
you'd be like, Farney, just cool it. And I'd be like, okay, coach. But I mean,
I
but
like
he
hearing
also he also got it. Like, I mean, he played in the coast there, I mean, for several years in South Carolina. Um, and like we just that team, I don't know. I've thought about that before, about the difference of what the Dayton Bombers were. And I mean, that was a tough pill to swallow, to play until June 7th or whatever that was and not win, right? Like, I mean, you and I both
I'll never forget watching the Stanley Cup finals when we were in it. And they put up on the screen like the only hockey games still going on in the world are the NHL playoffs and the Dayton Bombers against the Idaho
yeah,
Steelheads.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, it was a short
And
summer that year.
yeah, I mean, I think about comparing those teams and whatever, but I mean, we did, like, I mean, you talk about the Oilers and Florida about to play the Stanley Cup Finals, like, um, we were playing the Alaska Aces in the league championship, like going from Charleston to Anchorage, Alaska. Like, I mean, I don't think any teams, probably other than Russia, like somebody's had to fly that far and play a playoff series. Like that was nuts.
How did it go? 2-3-2?
Yes. And the most frustrating part, Wally, was we split in Alaska, came home, won the next two games. So we were up 3-1. And we were like, okay, we're doing this. Game 5, home, 10,000 fans in the stands. This is going to be rocking. We lose in overtime. And we're like, oh my gosh. Like,
Then you
that
got to
was
go to Alaska.
bullet to the chest. Like, the team didn't even like book flights for us. Like, they were prepared to like have tickets for us to go back to Alaska because it's the East Coast, right? I think the Dayton Bombers did the same thing with us, but so it's like, yeah, 6 players had to for the next day. 6 players had to fly from like Charleston to Atlanta to Phoenix to Seattle to Anchorage. We're like, and then play a game the next day. And
In
then
the
another
finals for the
a
championship.
different 6 would fly from Charleston to where Charlotte to Minneapolis to Seattle to Alaska. And we're like, we didn't even get to go as a team like on that whatever, right?
Yeah,
So
you
we
want to
go
be a
up to
team all
Alaska.
the time. That wouldn't even feel the same showing up like that. But
Yeah. We go up to Alaska. We lose game 6. So here comes game 7. It's like June 11th, June 12th, something like that, right? And like I had been playing with a broken hand for about 18 games. I blocked a shot. Um, like I was just beat, right? And then you're doing
mm,
these flights and then having to play. And we greased it out in game 7. But like, I mean, I know like after we lost game 6, Bedsy had like he had like a touch, like he had the feel, right? He knew we were dejected. That like we had blew our chance at winning at home in game 5. Game 6, in my opinion, we didn't have any chance of winning. We didn't have a flight home, or a flight to Alaska. Game 7, we just, he's like, we're not even doing a pregame skate. We just walked from the hotel. We went over to, I want to say like a school playground and just had a chat. And he's like, you know what? He's like, you guys, you just got to remember, like, where did you guys all start? I mean, this is an opportunity that you guys get, you'll never get again. He's like, sitting in a schoolyard here, you remember playing road hockey at your school and all this, like, it's just as all this, like, put stuff back into perspective. And he's like, same thing. He's like, you're the only team that's playing hockey in North America tonight professionally. Like, we're here in
Yeah.
the middle of June. And he's like, just go and have fun. Like, I mean, he's like, and we went out, we played so loose. I think we won like 4 or 5-2 or something or whatever. But like, it was just like, like you had those good coaches that understood when to
Yeah.
punch and then when to help, just, put an arm on your shoulder or whatever and
Yeah,
help.
well, yeah, yeah.
Right?
And then you always have to review your performance too. Is like, I know there were times where I did that good this year, but then like, and we won all Ontario in case you're wondering. But I remember going to all Ontario's for the final tournament, and we had a 3-week break after winning our league. And there's 3 weeks where we're sitting around with nothing going on, and I've all the parents, the whole town, everybody talking to these kids about all Ontario, all Ontario, all Ontario. And then we get to the tournament, and then I go right over the top with my pregame speech about it. And then some of the kids were like shell shocked when they got out there because it was all like too much for them. It was all too big of a deal. And it was like me not being that coach that you just mentioned, then the one I came in hot that day, and I was like, I got to be like, get them going. And it's like, well, they're already got the nerves. It's like, why don't we just let them chill here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotta learn from your mistakes. That's hockey, right?
Yeah, that's big time. But I mean, the difference in those two teams, I'll say that, like, for me, I felt like it was easier in South Carolina. I'll be honest with you, man. Like, we had 3 lines that were like yours and JoJo and Mize's line. Like, I mean, we could be bullies, like, offensively. Like, we had Travis Morin, who I think led the league in points that year. Like, our game 6 and 7 in Alaska, like, we had a first rounder and a second rounder D-man healthy scratched in the stands. Like we had players, like, I
Well,
mean,
and
we beat.
I think that's how you win in the coast. I don't know how it goes nowadays, but I thought that's what Clance did. He played the players that were ready then, and it wasn't about who was drafted when. I mean, Peter Pohl had a great career after. Like, he had a hell of a career, but that guy had a tough time with Clance because he wasn't playing the
Yeah,
hockey his way, right?
yeah.
But
But yeah, and I'll say the Bombers, like, we relied on our structure and our goaltender. And I mean, we
we
didn't
we
have
relied on not getting scored on a lot.
we didn't have like that time where you're getting outplayed for like 20 out of 30 minutes, and then somebody could come down the wing, like this Max LaCroix kid on our South Carolina team that had a great shot. Like, I mean, he come down and then all of a sudden just bury one under the bar from the wing, and you're like,
We're
we're
tied
up
again.
1-0, and we just got outplayed for the first 30 minutes.
Well, to be honest, what I thought happened in the Dayton, Idaho thing is I think Berkey ran out of gas. I think he stopped a lot of shots that year. He played every single minute of the playoffs. And I remember seeing him before some of those games in the finals where you'd look in the trainer's room and you're like, is he dead? Is he coming out to play tonight? And then he would go out and play and stop the pucks the best he could. But man, seeing him laying on the trainer's bench before the game, you're like, is he like okay? Like, actually?
Well, what
Um,
better that guy was.
but the thing was like, I don't think we I think happy hockey players play better for one, and I thought we made the best of Dayton, Ohio, and we made it as fun as we could with what we were dealing with. But playing in South Carolina, life can be more fun and hockey players can be happier. But same in Idaho. And I thought we ran into a team that when you look at their roster and the way they played us in that series, they played the same way we did, but they also just had they just had a little bit more than we did.
Yeah. Like I played with Daryl Hay one year in Japan or whatever. We talked about it over beers and whatever. I'm like, I felt the same thing. Like, I mean, you had a match, I'll say +3, you know, of just that, I'll say maybe more game determining factors on their team that we didn't have, right? But
Well, they had a lot of them, man. Like they had 3 lines of all players, and it was a
But
series.
you know what, like Berkey, I mean, that guy was a phenomenal competitor. I mean,
He was.
he was such a leader without being a leader that like his intensity in practice, like that guy was like he was business, man. Like I remember as a rookie coming out of college and
He was a
like
pro. He was
yeah,
serious.
like ripping pucks after practice when Clancey would be working at us and Berkey would stay out there and starting goalie and just get peppered with slapper after slapper from the point from us D-men and whatever and deflections and blah blah whatever. And like if you shot the puck like on him like more than 2.5 feet off the ground, like he would be staring at you like, did you seriously just shoot it that high on me? Whatever, like in the first
Oh,
half of practice and whatever. Like I remember like I just lost it, right? Like I sailed one up and it went like bar down or something, like from the point, and he was mad about it. He took his stick, and us D-men were standing up at the blue line in the line, and he took his goalie stick and he helicoptered it right at a 6 D-man standing at the blue line, like so mad that I shot the puck that high and whatever. I was like, whoa. I'm like, we were all just like dropped like army men getting out of the way of the paddle. Like,
there are some competitors out there in the game, and I didn't remember that until you brought that up. But he was one of the goalies that wouldn't let you shoot high on him, and he would get like mad. And to me, just thinking out loud again is like that doesn't make sense to me. People shoot high in games and you have to stop them when they hit the top of the net, not just the bottom of the net. But like we were trained, man. He trained us that year that like you shoot it at my pads, and if I want on my right pad, you shoot at my right pad. If you want my left pad, you shoot at my left pad. I'm like, okay, wherever you want, sir. Just keep stopping the pucks every game.
but I mean, he had a lot of clout with him too. I mean, because he won the national championship at Denver, right? And I mean, like,
he had played in the show when he had got there.
yeah.
Yeah.
He was a Thrashers guy, wasn't he? Atlanta Thrashers.
Well, and he also won East Coast Goalie of the Year that year with us. Hey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But hey, we had a hell of a D zone. So your hometown though did not win Hockeyville. I had that written down. You asked me to vote. I didn't know the time restraints. You asked me to vote, and I said yes, I will. And then it was like the next day, I go online, and they're like, "It's done," and I'm like, "What?"
You can't tell people 7 days in advance; they're not going to pay attention. Anyways,
you didn't give me enough time. I was trying to get it out there to the world.
We just figured all the Trudeau lovers in Ontario just loved giving it to an Ontario.
I didn't even see who got it. Is it someone in Ontario? Sorry, man. I was trying to have your back.
What was it? Wasn't it Elliott Lake or something? Where's that?
I don't know. I'm not going to answer that. I lived in.
I appreciate your support, Wally. I appreciate your support. Well, our arena in our just 600 yards that way is, it got shut down in end of December or whatever because the chiller plant, and there were some leaks and stuff and whatever. So everybody was pretty.
That's not good.
They're gonna have it repaired and stuff for this fall, but.
Is that the rink it was for then? Well, that's what was trying to win her. Yeah. That would have been nice to fix her up, eh?
But you know, it was pretty cool how much like BC rallied around our tiny little small town, dude. Like they were playing like 5-minute segments on the Jumbotron of the Canucks game, like the game before and all the voting.
That's
like,
cool.
They flew Kirk McLean, legendary Canucks goalie hero, up here to the Enderby Arena and the mascot and whatever to like support the cause and whatever. I mean, it was pretty cool. Like just how many people like actually jumped on board.
Well, that is cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. It would have been nice if you guys won, and I tried to help. I just was late, but I did post it, and I tried to get other people to vote before I actually had an opportunity.
Thanks, Wally.
Yeah. So when you left RPI though, after you were captaining Mo and Lordo, I remember I was on a one-way AHL deal. You and Bruce Frischman were on two-way East Coast AHL deals. So what were your pro options out of college? Like, what'd you have? Was that what'd you?
Well, I had a tough go. You know what? I'm not, and we all have our own sob story about why we didn't make it anywhere higher.
Oh
And
yeah, you can listen to me sob all the time too.
I have on your other podcast, but
Yeah,
you know what?
it's a
My
sad
senior
life.
year, like my second year at university was good. And like there were some teams sniffing around that were like, okay, would this kid potentially be interested in leaving and whatever? And I was like, I don't know. My parents never would have let me leave university, right? I mean, I was studying engineering and I'm like, okay, there's no chance. So third year didn't go that great. And then fourth year, November, get a slap shot on the arch of my foot, broke a bone. I had my foot in a cast from Saturday like night after the game through Thursday. They would cut the cast off. I would practice, go out, play Friday, Saturday, and they'd put a cast back on my ankle. I did that until Christmas when it finally like sort of healed. Second game back, I'm penalty killing, just standing in front of the net, lifting up a stick. Boom, slap shot breaks my ankle. I just they just put me in a walking mood. I'm like, or maybe I don't know if
This
it
is your
counts that way.
senior year?
Yeah, and I actually took a month off for that. I was in a full cast. Came back. Our team was like, our coach was under the gun. People were calling for his head, and I felt pressure to like come back, and it was stupid. Like I
Mm-hmm.
should not have. I couldn't even pivot one way. Like, I mean, as a defenseman, like you can't pivot one way. I'm like, because
Yeah.
my ankle was broken. I'm like, so I finished the last 5, 6 games of the season and played I think we got bumped after the first round, I'll just say, or whatever, uh, with a broken ankle. And then sure enough, like fractures worse than before. They put some screws into it like 2 days after the season ended, right? Like,
Because you played
um,
on it.
yeah, like I do really regret that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was tough too, because like my family advisor, whatever at the time, was like, yeah, Tampa Bay came to watch you, when you were down in Princeton. I'm like, well, that was my second game back. I'm like, I couldn't even turn, I was like Zoolander. Like, I
Well, and
mean,
that's what's interesting about the whole thing when you
and
think
that's
about
and that's really hard.
it. It
Um,
is.
I'll say that is a little burn in my stomach. I'll say of my hockey career. I know you talked about I heard on your other podcasts about your opportunities in
Well, it's a
Syracuse.
small window you get, right? And especially when you're a college free agent that is not as young as the puppies they've drafted, that the scouts and everybody have their necks and skin into it or whatever. But it's like, um, I my mom dropped off some old stuff and I saw an article from Western Michigan. And right in the article, it talks about that I haven't practiced in weeks, but that I play the games. And then in the article, I have a quote saying I would play with a broken ankle or leg if they would let me. And that's who we were. But when you look back on your career, especially at that age, it's like when people are coming to watch you, you need to play well. And maybe you should play when you're healthy instead of
Yeah,
what we did to ourselves.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, I was captain of the team, and I
When
mean,
I wouldn't change who I was either. I
I'm not
mean,
gonna I'm not gonna blame any health officials or coaches or whatever. I put that own pressure on myself, and obviously you want to play, and I mean, but it was stupid. I mean, it really was, right?
Right. So then you end up with the East Coast
Well,
AHL
like
deal,
I had
but
a
you
chance.
played more AHL games than me that next year. And you know, when those things start and I'm on a one-way AHL deal, and then I see like you're a defenseman, so it wasn't the same world. We're not competing with each other, but like for freshmen and like the college career I had and the college career he has, and then they tell me I can't play on the third or fourth line. And then he ends up playing way more than me and then ends up playing in the NHL, but like we're still like best buddies and brothers. But it was like, I guess not jealousy. I was proud of him, but it was like, man, I wish that was me.
And like, I mean, the
Our
interest.
Dayton team was way cooler though than the AHL team.
Yeah,
I'll say that forever. We were way more of a team than the AHL, and I felt
right.
way more like myself there.
There Syracuse did have some beauties
They
like
did.
Kennedy and Caldwell and
Oh,
like
they did.
Darcy, and I mean, even like I mean, Glenn Cross of all people was. I mean, he was sent down from the big team, right?
Yeah.
When I was there, so he was staying in the hotel with me because I mean, I spent 4 months in the hotel, and like people don't ever think about that too. Like I lived in a hotel for 4 months that year, like that's crazy.
It is
But
crazy.
Glenner was like, I'm like, he's
I
on
lived in that
show.
hotel for about that long too over my time, just 2 different years.
Yeah, like he was on Shodo, but like I mean, he didn't have to, but he'd come and like take me out for dinners and like make me feel part of the team and whatever. I'm like, I mean, like those guys are like the special guys that you're like, wow. I'm like, this guy, a small town Alberta guy too, or whatever. And
Honestly, though, when I say that, you're right. I thought Columbus had great taste in a lot of the men they had, but I thought there was about 5 or 6 that didn't fit. And
yeah,
they changed the atmosphere because Darcy, Kanzi, when they're inviting you to go do things after practice and you're the new guy
yeah,
and they're taking you places and you feel like part of it. There were so many of those guys. But then there were a few that weren't like that.
yeah.
Anyhow.
And you know what? Like, I mean, even you know, you saw that. Like, I mean, in the three AHL teams that I got to play with, I mean, my advice to some like younger players now is not like, I mean, I know the game's way more skilled and whatever, but there were so many players, and you saw those guys. I mean, and even Frisch being one of them, right? That like you saw that they got called up to the NHL, and everybody in the dressing room would be like, "Did he just get called up? Like he's still there for 3 weeks and did it whatever." And like there'd be the guys that were, I'll say, got out their machetes and hacking him down when he wasn't there. Like, oh, how did he get called up and whatever,
Oh
right?
yeah.
But like the guys that I saw like go up and like stick around were like him, like Frisch. He
He had a role.
he was right here, right? Like
Yeah.
a mile, 1,000 miles an hour, win faceoffs,
And penalty
block
kill.
shots,
And penalty kill. Yeah.
and penalty kill. I'm like a reliable player on any line that you put him on because he wasn't, a risk to get scored on. So I mean, I same thing when in Springfield and Massachusetts. I mean, like like you had guys like Robbie Shrimp and some skilled guys, first rounders that weren't getting called up. But you had like Liam Reddicks and who was like Troy Bodie and these guys that were up and
The
down.
third, fourth liners that muck it up and down the wing, chip it
Yeah.
out, chip it in. And there's so many guys that make a career and make way more money than we ever did doing that. And for me, it was tough with my physique as a 5'8" guy was in the AHL, especially back then. They don't have room for a guy my size on the third, fourth line. But um, the guys that are tall and fast and can chip it out and in, man, if you don't make mistakes, you can do things. But Bruce, man, I was impressed by him, man. He left Colorado College late. He was older. He's on an East Coast HL deal, and he ends up playing NHL games, and he lived in those same apartments with us. And then you know who else just said he's going to come on? That I actually, when they were silly enough to call me up to the AHL at the end of the year when I was a Dayton Bomber, not a Syracuse Crunch, and I went on a recruiting trip and I convinced Philip Dupuis to come down and play the playoffs with us. And Dupe said, I don't know if that's a good idea. I haven't really played in the coast all year. And why would I go play the coast playoffs? And I said, man, we got a squad. We can do this. We just need a guy like you on the second line. And then sure to shit, he comes down and plays with us. And then you see him play for the Leafs. You see him play in the NHL. And I wrote to him and he says, I'm in, let's talk. And he's a GM in the queue now.
Wow. What a beauty he was too.
He was a beauty. Absolute dandy. And thanks for coming to Dayton and playing the playoffs, right?
What a roll of the dice for him, hey?
Isn't that something to do that? He had played like 6 or 7 games in the regular season. They called me up at the end of the year and we're having a night with like Caldy and Kanzi and we're all sitting around and I'm like, Dupes, you got to do this, man. You got to do this for me. You got to come to the coast. You got to play for the Daytona Beach Bombers. We got a chance. What if we win it? You imagine we got put out first round and he had played the A all year and then he's got more coast games. We went to the finals though, folks, and he played in the NHL.
Yeah.
Right? But I really, really enjoyed that guy's company. He was a great teammate. Played hockey the right way too. Jeepers, we're all over the place, eh?
Yeah.
You got any questions for me while I'm looking at this? You know what the roommate story I had that I thought you were gonna bring up when you said you were talking
about the ski with the Bombers?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, that maybe isn't my best look that you brought that story up. I didn't know about that one. It would be actually when we won game 7 in Florida. I'm pretty sure you were my hotel roommate when we had to get to the airport.
Oh yeah. What a disaster.
I shouldn't have brought that one up, eh?
Oh boy.
We had won game 7, winning's fun, and we weren't supposed to beat the Florida Everblades, and we were in Fort Myers.
Oh boy.
So I guess we'll just get the cold versions out. Is we win, we have fun, both teams go out, and then the Florida Everblades say to me and Mizey and a couple others, Fordo I think was there.
Yeah.
Let's go back to our apartment and keep this thing rolling. And I thought it was as hockey as it gets, that 2 teams that played a best of 7 series till game 7 and mucked it up as hard as you can, all hung out and drank beers together and had fun together. The refs and linesmen were at the apartment. The Florida Everblades were there. The Daytona Beach Bombers were there. And we all had a night. And then we won't look at game sheets, but a zebra drove us back to the hotel. And then when they dropped me off at the hotel, I was not prepared that it was time to go to the airport. I was not prepared to do that. And we got my bags packed. And fun fact, Frankie, is when we took that rental car to the airport, I left my bag in the car and left. We had gone shopping at those outlets and I bought all these nice fancy clothes I was so proud of. I left them all in the car. I left everything in Florida.
Well, I specifically remember us checking in at the airport and Scott Ford, like his shoes were untied, his belt was like hanging in the wind, shirt untucked. Lance was like sitting like 10 feet from me, and he was like, oh my gosh, Barney, like, am I seriously looking at this right now? And Fordo had left his passport at the hotel. So, and he knew with his big Shreky smile, he's like, hey, Barney, I forgot my passport at the hotel. I'm like, well, get in a cab and go get it. I'm like, dude, we're gonna get on a jet. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, his shoes weren't even tied up. I'm like, oh, what a just legendary stories.
Oh, I remember Clancey told us not to get too carried away because we still had the finals to play, but it was such a big win and we were in Fort Myers, and we just couldn't contain ourselves when we got back to the Everglades apartment.
Yeah, I mean, plus like how run down were you after that series too? I mean, like
Oh,
98 degrees. I'm like, yeah, I was getting an IV bag every
playing
second.
triple overtimes and whatnot, and man, they was intense and they were a good team. But my funny story that I guess I've never told before though was, well, we were so there, we were so there that when we got back to the Cincinnati airport, I couldn't find the team in the bus or my clothes that were still in Florida. So then you guys were all on the bus, and I finally found you guys, and it took some time. And then I finally got on the bus, and everybody's looking at me. I'm like, whatever. We're going to the finals, baby.
Yeah. And then Ford would always, he was always sitting on the bus. He's like, oh yeah, anybody who was on an AHL contract, he's like, oh yeah, Shodo guys, or anybody who's on an NHL contract, he's like, oh Shodo, fine, never mind, $100.
Oh God, that date year though, I remember buses breaking down and then getting put on the fan bus with the fans, or sleeping sleeping on the side of the road waiting for another bus to come get us. It was something else. Oh, it's wild where the hockey journey can take you, isn't it?
Did you ever cross paths with Dave Wrigley?
Oh, I had him written down here. Yeah. So, fun fact is, well, my favorite memory is beating him in Germany to win the championship. So my story is after we lose in Dayton, I lose the next year in Landshut in overtime of the final game. Heartbreaking again. And then the next year, Bietigheim beats Munich in the finals, and he was on that team. But then after I leave Bietigheim, he then becomes the new Bietigheim Steeler and did really well there. But I don't know him.
You don't know him? Oh, okay. I didn't know if you like guys ever played together or anything, because I know he's had some stints in Germany. So,
But
but
for you staying on the same team in Japan for 5 years, I saw that you were like the only real import that was doing that.
I mean, I'll just be honest with you. I mean, they treated us great, and I mean, every year they were giving me a pay bump, and like
Yeah, you want
even
to be
when
there.
they maxed out what they could pay me, they through like negotiating the summer. I mean,
They
we were
wanted
owned
you.
the largest sporting goods chain in Japan, so like the company was great. They took care, like, dude, the little things they do for like me that were tied in my contract, or like they'd fly my mom over once a year to visit. They'd fly my wife Kathy back to New York twice a year. Like they pay for our trip to go to
How
Australia.
did you end up getting there?
Steve Munn was a guy. He played in, I think, in Manchester in the UK or whatever. But he was an RPI grad. D-man played for Norfolk and Augusta, I think. But he was what? He was like 4 years older than me. But he was kind of through his competitive part of his pro career, trying to make it in North America. And he had played in Manchester, and I think they had a good team and won the championship, won something new. He called me like out of the blue on on August 1st or something. I was like, I didn't have a contract lined up for the fall. I was waiting and I was waiting. I'm like, I had a good year,
You were the
good finish
captain and won it.
in yeah, in South Carolina, and I played in Quad City for the Flames team. I'm like, I got to play a ton. I'm like, I was playing on the top pair with like, what was his name? Anders Eriksson or whatever. Like, he was down from the show on a $5 million contract. I'm like, okay, these guys are gonna offer me something. The team's moving to Abbotsford in BC, the farm team. I'm like, I'm a BC guy. I'm like, they're gonna sign me to a one way and whatever. I'll be there. Nothing formulated. And then that Steve Munn guy from RPI, he he called me out of the blue and he was like, hey, new team in Japan. They're looking for one more import defenseman. I looked at my wife, like we're standing on the patio. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, this is like absolutely out of this world. Like this phone call, like this could be cool. There's a guy from my hometown that played for the Texas Rangers and Milwaukee Brewers, a baseball player that went over to Japan. His name was Kevin Reimer, but he went over to Japan and played baseball there for a handful of years after his major league days were fizzled. And so I called him up. I'm like, hey Kev, I'm like, what do you think about this? He's like, you gotta do this. He's like, we missed going to Japan. Like every day that we left, like we always talked about Japan and we loved it. We loved the food. We loved the culture. The people are freaking amazing. He's like, come out for dinner and we'll talk about it and whatever. Like he literally like just like recruited us and he's like, you won't regret a second of it. And so I'm like, a couple days later, I'm like, okay, let's do this. My wife was unhappy working for Cisco Systems at the time and in like a high pressure sales job. And
you jumped at it.
she was like, well, let's freaking do this. And didn't really look back, but
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what is the food like in Japan?
I don't know. Like, I mean, you got like sushi, you got all these like great like noodle and rice dishes, but I mean, it's very simplistic, but it's all fresh. Like, barely anything's cooked with. Dude, I was like a shell of what like I am now. You know, like when I was there, like my sisters, I'd talk to them on like Skype or whatever at the time, because that's how you talk to people. They'd be like, "Whoa,
you're skinny.
What are you doing over there? Like, are you not eating?" Like, I'm like, "No, it's just like the diet here is just everything's about freshness and quality of like preparation of the food." And I'm like, no butter, no cheese, no nothing, whatever, right? Like, but I mean, oh yeah, we miss it every day there. We miss the people there all the time too. We'll go back there again for sure to visit.
I understand. A lot of places I played, I would love to get back to and visit. And I find when I went to Germany, I couldn't believe how much more care they took into food. Like how much harder they tried to make real food and like fresh and from scratch instead of what we do over here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I mean, and like the people, like the organization there, I mean, well, to give you a little taste of like after we won our championship, I came home for about a week or two or whatever, and I was home, and at the end of the season, because like we won, they flew the whole team from Japan to North America, and I met them. Where did I meet them? In Chicago. They flew to Chicago. This is when Chicago, I think, won the cup that year. They flew the whole team. They flew us imports to Chicago, and we all got to watch playoff game there. Next day, we went to a Cubs game. We get on a plane. We fly down to Tampa, spend a few days. The whole team watch Tampa play the Rangers in their conference final. I mean, and then back to Chicago, and I think watch the next Blackhawks game, playoff games, like, and like, I
So
mean,
your
that was
season's
like,
over at this time?
oh yeah, it was like our reward for winning the championship, and we partied the whole time. Like, I mean, it was amazing.
Jeepers.
Yeah.
I found it interesting when I was in Germany. We win the championship and we had a parade and it was incredible and I'm not complaining about anything. But then I think it was 2 years later, a year later, we're in 9th place. Or no, what place were and they said if we win the first round, if we just win the first round, they would take the whole team to Mallorca. And I'm like, so when the budget's lower and we finish in 8th or 9th and we win the first round, we go to Mallorca, but we win the championship, we're just out of here. Okay. That makes sense. Oh man. But I find it interesting how much winning you did in your career, and then like you won for Jared Bednar. And for me as like a coach and getting into this is like I'm so thankful to the boys I just coached and like the captain I had, the assistant captains I had, every player on the team, and like all the other coaches I was with was like, we all won this together, and now we can all tell everybody we won all Ontario. And like you were the captain of the coach that like then ends up winning the Stanley Cup. Like that must have been a proud day for you.
Yeah, and you got like Cale McLean. I think he was our assistant coach. He's I think assistant coach of the Calgary Flames. Like I don't know. I think Pat Weller is he was a D man. He's I think he's maybe an assistant coach in Hershey or something, or maybe head coach. I don't know.
Isn't it weird where winning takes people and like getting to finals? And it's like us with Dayton. It's like if we do get put out first round against Cincinnati, when we thought we were going to, and we all don't go to the finals,
Yeah.
who knows if we're all where we ended up, right?
Yeah. No, Travis Morin. I mean, he was a league leader in the AHL and like had a sick career with the Texas Stars after that year. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like he was maybe an assistant coach there and got a handful of games with Dallas. Yeah, Steve Pinazzato or whatever. Like he played with us in South Carolina up to Hershey, and then before you know it, he's playing with the Capitals and Canucks. Yeah, it is crazy how that goes. I mean, it's interesting you talk about like the winning stuff and whatever. I don't disclose this with too many people, but after even that Dayton year where you won, and then I'll say like you have this internal, well, at least for me, I had this internal expectation that, I did not sleep well when I didn't win. I mean, it was terrible for me. I know that everybody can say, well, yeah, I want to win. Well, like to me, like it was like as I got later in my career, like we won the championship in Japan a few times and whatever. I'm like, to me, like it was unacceptable for us not to be like in the finals. That like it almost got to the point where I felt contagious and the losses almost hurt me more. And like I'm like, whoa, I'm like, I gotta like chill out here. I'm like, I'm not going overboard here. I'm like it's just a loss, right? Like, I mean,
Well,
but like you get like kind of in that realm where I'm like,
well, like the thing is too, though, is like I find like so my issue started young. I won all Ontario like in novice with all my boys from my hometown. Then years later, we win the Sutherland Cup in Junior B, and a lot of it was my core from my hometown that we won with. And then I go to NCAA and we get beat for 4 years, and it was so opposite of what I had done my whole life. And then we get to Dayton, and we get so close with the team we had, and nobody expected
yeah,
nothing from us, and we almost do it. And it was so heartbreaking to go that far and not do it. And then the next year we lose in overtime of the finals, of the final game. And I was so heartbroken again because you know how opposite it is. You know what it does. You know the feeling and what it does for all of your friends. And then when I finally did it the next year in Germany at Bietigheim, things got completely away from me. And you know me, things got completely away from me. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to happen. But like after two heartbreaking losses in a row and losing for 4 years in college and then finally winning again, I was beside myself.
yeah,
But you take the losses harder because you know what it can do. You know what it can do to a community. You know what it can do to the parents, the families, the friends, everybody. And you see all the joy on everybody's face and how proud they are. Man, it was so cool to get to win again this year, man. I thought my winning was over when I retired. And then the puppies won all Ontario for me this year. Beat everybody.
yeah,
It was so fun.
that's wicked.
Yeah. But, that like when you do the winning and you get so close and it doesn't happen, man, like once you get it, you know, there's guys that lose first round a lot in their career. They make good money, they play in lots of leagues and do well, but they don't, it's not the same.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. But do I have any other questions? Do you have any other questions? Do we need to go to sleep? I feel fresh still. See, I am still an
You're
animal.
feeling fresh.
Yeah, a little
All right.
hot. But
I
no,
know
I don't think I have anything else. I think it's neat because you were the leader in our department. There's no doubt about it. I found it cool that you were Lordo's coach or captain before, and he is the guy that made me a captain and brought me back for Wally night. And I really enjoyed playing for him, even though he was a younger punk than me that played himself too much. He's a player coach, but and a right winger, Frankie, unreal.
I got a question for you though. I mean, because we're talking about like I just coach my son's in the 9U or whatever U9 hockey now, right?
Right. So you are coaching.
I'm coaching the like you said. What do you coach? U13s?
That's what I did last year. I've coached U11s, U9 girls, and then U13.
Like, what's your feeling about like the minor hockey scene? Like, I have this like really internal struggle right now. Because like when I first
Oh,
came back from overseas and like I helped out what was called our like a regional zone team, which was I'll say like the top team tiered team in the area and whatever for like the bantams and midgets and whatever. And like I couldn't believe how intense like parents were like pulling me aside in like December, like asking me about their kids' future for like the summer and which 3 camps they should go to and like what spring league team they should play for and whatever. And I was like, like this stuff. I'm like, I couldn't even wrap my head around it. Like, I mean, I feel
well,
like
the further
what,
you get down into that, it's like when you first come back and just think hockey's going to be hockey, and then you realize that there's all this other noise going on. Um, there's a lot to it. Um, I don't, there's a lot to it, but
I'm not
like,
trying to get you in trouble because you're still a coach, but
well, it's like, I'm very thankful to like these kids that just won all Ontario for me. I'll never forget them for the rest of my life because I personally think I was always good at bringing teams together. Maybe I didn't have the body type for the NHL, but I was good at bringing teams together. And
absolutely.
I think I'm better at coaching than I was at playing. And that these kids won all Ontario for me. It's like I was 0-3 in minor hockey coaching applications. Um, I was up
Right.
for the Hobie Baker. I played in the AHL, and like I'm not tooting my own horn, but it's like
Yeah.
I was volunteering to help as much as I can, and I didn't get the job. And it's all worked out, but like the kids I've coached are who changed it for me was that they listened to me, that they bought into what I was telling them. And now we have changed the script, and now I am getting coaching jobs, and now people are asking me to coach elsewhere. And I think it's hilarious that these kids did this for me, and I'm very thankful, you know?
Like a
But it's an
modern,
interesting landscape.
you're a modern day Derek Clancey.
I don't think so. I'm not in Dayton, Ohio.
Are you making people feel like do you sit on the bike like as they walk in the door and be like I remember Clance being like, yeah. He's like riding the bike, crushing this sweat when we'd walk in the rink in the morning way, right? And he'd be like, yeah, Farney, you give me 2 weeks, I could be playing with you guys. He's like, all I need is 2 weeks. I'll be back out there. Point a game guy. I'm like, you
Like
probably would
he was
be.
such a hockey guy. Like everything he said though made so much sense.
As it
Was
does
he was
now.
in shape, and then I'd show up at the rink and he's running the stairs of the Nutter Center, like just giving her. And I remember him finishing one day, and I'm like, "Why are you doing that? What are you doing? Why are you running the stairs here?" And he goes, "Well, I want I want to be a coach. I want to be a hockey guy." And I'm like, "I'm not Ken Hitchcock. I can't walk around like Ken Hitchcock. I have to be a professional and I have to be a hockey guy and I'm going to run those stairs." And I'm like, "Oh, and now you're the assistant GM of the Leafs. I got you." Okay.
Dude, that was nothing. After that year, and I signed a contract with Springfield in Massachusetts, and whatever that was the Oilers farm team, and we had Buckberger as our coach. That guy as a coach. Like, I mean, you should have seen the dynamic in that dressing room. Like, you want to talk about people trying to like impress people with their workouts more than actually worrying about how they're playing on the ice.
Right. It was
Like,
about the working out instead of the hockey.
oh man, like the skill guys on that team were so miserable. Like the coaches there, like when we'd roll in, like if like you had to be there by 7:30, like no later, right? Like if you didn't show up by 7 and didn't have like 25 minutes in on the bike by then, and like the coaches would like Bucky and what was his name, like Mark Bell, assistant coach or something. I mean, they were crushed. Like Mark Bell was this big meat guy. He's just crushing bench press right in front of you on the bike. Bucky would be doing bicep curls like on a 45th minute of this bike ride right beside you. And you'd be like, I mean, I blew my groin apart, like working so hard off the ice, like took me out of the lineup for 5 weeks, like that guy, like had a terrible road trip or whatever. We get back next practice, big dirty old bag skate. He gets on the line, the head coach, and is bag skating with us in the AHL and beating us all like down and backs, and he was beating us all like by 15 feet. And we were like, like I mean, if you got healthy scratch, I remember getting healthy scratch, and like the three guys or whatever I'd say that were
Sounds
healthy.
like you wouldn't want to get healthy scratched with a coach like that around. Jeez Louise. I remember the Syracuse skates in the mornings after everybody would do a normal practice. Then you're like, so you're telling me I'm staying out here for 30, 40 minutes just to skate and shoot pucks? That sounds like just as
Springfield
much
was
fun
way
as playing
harder.
hockey.
Yeah, Springfield was way worse than that. Like after you got dirty old bag skated, after everybody went into the dressing room with a healthy scratch, Bucky would come back out with the other assistant coach. And I don't know, I'll say if we had four of us that were scratched, they'd pick one player, and Bucky and Belzy would play 3-on-3 against us. I'm like, I
And
was
they'd be
pretty
into it.
fresh. I was pretty fresh to the team. And like we're playing 3-on-3, and he's full on throwing body checks at me. I'm like, okay, this guy was kind of a borderline NHL legend, like captain of the Edmonton Oilers, whatever. I'm like, and he's my head coach. I'm like, he's like throwing body checks with no gear on. Like, I'm like up against the glass, throws a body check, bounces off me, slams onto the ice. And I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, I kind of like put my shoulder back into him and whatever. And he went down. I'm like, oh man. Like, what if the head coach got hurt on the ice? Playing 3-on-3. And I mean, oh man, it was ludicrous. I mean, but those guys, the skill
You know,
guys, like,
talking about giving people advice about their careers in hockey is when you're talking about being able to be a third, fourth line guy or like play that role, was when I got to the HL, when I left NCAA and I had been a small town boy that,
yeah,
the college free agent, when I got there, I was so worried about what everybody thought of me, how I fit in, what I needed to do to fit in around all of it. And then like you get into mucking it up in practice and you're a little tentative because you're worried about what someone thinks of you, where it's like, who gives a shit? You're there. Go out and then just muck it up and be yourself. Don't worry about what nobody thinks of you. Be yourself and be a good teammate.
I don't know.
I was way too nervous when I got out there, man. I was nervous around the coaches. I was nervous around the players. I was nervous around everybody when I got to the HL.
Absolutely. And that was the hard part. Like, I mean, you you and I, we had such a short leash in that environment, right? Like
Oh yeah.
it was like, you could play, as far as you're concerned, the perfect AHL call up game and then have like one turnover in the neutral zone and like nothing generate out of it. I mean, like the coach would like dial you in after the next pregame skate in the video room and do, well, you shouldn't have done this and you should have done
And then
that.
you see all these other guys
And
making
then like,
mistakes
okay,
everywhere, and you're
you're
like,
like,
Moly
yeah,
moly.
yeah, and okay, so you're not playing today and whatever. But you know what? I mean, I respected those guys and whatever, but like you had people like Kevin Lowe was a GM of the Oilers at that time. Like he'd come down and watch and whatever. I'm like, you go into the gym in the morning, like Kevin Lowe is riding a bike by you, you know, like these people like Pete Peters, the goalie coach. I mean, I love like that guy was taught me so much about a goalie's perspective when I work with him after practice. I'm like, you got to be around these people that were like NHL legends that you're like, I felt so wrapped up inside that I'm like, oh, I'm like, I can't make a mistake in front of this guy. I'm like Pete Peters, I'm like, this is like he's our goalie coach, but he's willing to work with me after practice about like with my shots from the point and how a goalie views it and whatever, and like through and around the screen and whatever. I'm like, this guy was a Vezina winner in the NHL. I'm like, Kevin Lowe's, Kelly Buckburgers. I'm like, you get to meet these people. I'm like, I felt like practice. I was like I
Nervous.
was going in to play like a game 5 of a playoff series. Like I had like
Oh,
butterflies and tension, right?
well, and I wish like I could have talked to myself before I was getting into it. Now that I've seen it all and I've done it all, and it's like if I could have talked to myself before I got into that pro situation where it's always been a team. It's always been about the team and about winning the losing the game, and then to actually explain how it all works in pro hockey and the minor leagues, and that it's not always about who's playing best. It can be about contracts, it can be about what round you're picked in, it can be about who the GM of this team said to that coach to play this guy more. Or like there's so much more to it than just being a
Yeah,
teammate and playing.
yeah. But you know what? I had a lot of respect still from like with Buckberger and whatever. I'm like, yeah, he just wanted the best at it. He wanted you to work at it, and the way he played the game and the longevity to his career and whatever. I'm like, what he got out of it. I mean, maybe it wasn't the best model for players like you who had more skill, you know, and whatever, and the Rob Shrimps and the skill guys that were high draft picks there for Edmonton. But like, I had a lot of respect. He pulled me aside after game. We played like Friday night. I'm like, I had a good game. I felt like, I mean, I think I had an assist or two, and you know, like we lost like 5-3 or something. After, so we get the lineup on the board or whatever the next day, Saturday morning. I'm like, I got healthy scratch. I'm like, we had like two guys, two D men that were like -4 last night and like just were dreadful and whatever. And the bag skated me after pregame skate, right? And through the workout and whatever. And Bucky knew I was fucking mad, right? Like I was
Oh yeah.
choked
Yeah.
when I was walking.
And
I
you
had to
would be.
walk by his office to leave the arena. And he like came out of the office and grabbed me, like literally as I was like going out to the parking lot or whatever. He's like, come back in my office. And he pulled me in and he just leveled with me. He's like, Brad, he's like, you're probably our best defenseman last night. He's like, see this piece of paper? He's like, I got sent this lineup card from Edmonton last night, and that's who I'm supposed to play today. He's like, if it was not my call to take you out of the lineup. So I know you're pissed off. I'm glad you're pissed off. He's like,
Well,
don't be
that's
defensive.
nice that he told you that
He
instead
did
of the
say
not
that.
knowing, instead of
Right.
going back to your hotel and being like, what the hell is going on around here? Like, you brought me here to play, but then you don't play me. And it's like,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah. And you know what? And the same thing, like that guy, you could have thought, like some people would could have thought he was, you know, too hard on us and whatever, but like same thing that was kind of like Syracuse, where we were like a bubble team to get into the playoffs. We didn't end up making the playoffs, and they were going to send like 6 of us back down to Stockton in California for the playoffs. Um, and the night before we all had to fly out the next morning, he took all 6 of us. He's like, okay, you guys are all, he's like, don't tell anybody. We're all going out to my spot in town and we're going to go for drinks. And we all just talked. And he was telling us Glenn Anderson stories with the Oilers and Wayne Gretzky stories and pool parties when they're winning and like in Edmonton. And like, it was like the gloves were right off. Like we were just, it
Even
was,
you were part of his team. You were part of
yeah.
it. Yeah.
And so like, I mean, I was like, that was super cool. That meant a lot, right? Like, I mean, especially for how we thought internally, how we were being treated. I'm like, well, you know, this guy had a different motive and maybe he could have tweaked how he approached it all, but he was still that guy and he was rooting for us and he cared
Yeah.
about us, right?
Well, and every coach, I think, coaches like their personalities. I think he was an absolute gamer, as intense as they get on and off the ice, and he would carry that into coaching. Um, where my thing is, I thought I played my best when I was having fun, but also trying harder and doing it for my teammates. And that I thought when I wanted to play for my coach more and that I knew he had my back and that he was on my team, I would do more for him, and same with my teammates. And I try to do that in my coaching, is that I want them to be on my team, and that it's like, I'll do this for you, you do this for me, and we're all on the same team, and like, let's win together. But you have to work hard to win. It's not easy. You can have fun working hard. It doesn't have to suck all the time.
Yeah. But there's also the other end of the stick that, like, I won't name names, but I saw coaches, along that path too, that I'm like, are assistant coaches and coaches in the NHL that I was like, whoa. Like, Brent Walton of the whatever Ontario U15 league has probably got more understanding of what makes a team run than this guy. And I'm watching him on the NHL bench. I'm like, what is this guy doing? I can't imagine this guy being in that position. Like,
Mm.
you know,
Um, there's a lot of good dudes out there that I can't believe how many of my former teammates and buddies are coaches and GMs and assistant coaches all over the world. It's nice to see the hockey people staying in hockey. So, do you ever lace up the wheels?
not much now that my kids are into it. I
Right.
I used to go into like just on a Sunday night. I don't like being like playing hockey on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. like rec hockey and whatever.
Doesn't make sense to me.
I'm like, the most I would do is go out on a Sunday night. It's a group of guys that are kind of fun, easygoing guys. Make two teams, and
And
it's the
just play.
same ice time at like 7:30 or 8 o'clock on Sunday nights. And I just go out there like, and it's just fun, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you don't have to go play away games and or
No.
deal with rec hockey shenanigans of hero try hard guys and whatever,
You
right?
know what
Like,
you're getting into. Yeah. Because there's idiots out there in the.
well, I played in one tournament that actually in Vernon, whatever, which was like sort of a semi-competitive rec hockey tournament. Like it was in like April or something. Somebody called me up, be like, "Hey, do you want to play in this?" And I went on the Saturday and played two games. Like in the second game, there was like these hero guys from, I won't even name the town, but just wasted, dropping F bombs mile a minute at like this 12-year-old referee running around like two fights break out, whatever. I'm like, I'm carrying the puck through the neutral zone. Guy just hanging on me with a hook and whatever. I turned and two-handed the stick out of his hands and broke a stick and whatever. I was like, "Hey, I got 24 of these in my garage. I'll keep breaking them on you all night."
Yeah.
And after that
You
game,
were done.
I took my gear off and I said, and I didn't come back for the Sunday games. I was like, "Nope, not a
No.
chance."
I played an old I went back once for a buddy, but I got into a little dust up in an old timers game. A guy kept bullying me. Like, I took his puck and he felt bad that I took his puck, and then I stick handled around him, and then he got all upset, and then every time he'd be slashing and hacking and whacking, and I let it go for a bit. But like, me, it's like you can take it for so long, but it's like I never took this in my career. How am I going to keep taking this? So then it's near the end of the game. So what he had been doing to me during the game, when he got the puck, I intentionally skated up behind him and started whacking and hacking like he did to me. Like I didn't know what I was doing with my stick. And then all of a sudden he stops and hits me. And then another one of his buddies comes in to hit me, and then it's like, oh, so it's different if I do it, but if you guys do it to me, then it's okay. And then I was like, I'm out of here. But yeah, you got to stand up for yourself if people are idiots.
If you can find the right crew, and like I say, it's just like,
You need to find the right crew to want to play hockey nowadays, right?
absolutely. But there's no ice time anywhere like that. Like that's what I say. Like that ice time that guy's had for that organizes this hockey for several years is just gravy, and he gets it Sunday night at 8 o'clock every week. That it's like I'm like, well, I'm not getting home at like midnight or 1 in the morning and trying to
Working
go.
all day and parenting, and yeah, I hear you. Well, we should probably shut it down, eh? You are Pacific time, I'm Eastern.
Yeah.
Told you I could do this. I'm not even tired yet.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
you know what should happen at some point though, right? Is the boys like we should have like
a Dayton
minds and
Bombers
Swish,
reunion on?
a special guest of Paul Kelly come on
Oh my God.
for your
We
reunion.
so need Paul Kelly in the shed.
We
But no,
do.
it would be so fun to have a Dayton Bomber reunion, wouldn't it? Oh my God. Wouldn't that be something? Oh, it was a fun year, man. And like I say in hockey, you know, you get them put in different situations, you get put in different towns, you get put in different apartments, you have different coaches, different teammates, but you know, when you're around good people, you can make anything fun. And it didn't matter what was up against the Daytona Beach Bombers that year. We were playing to win,
Yeah.
and we nearly did her.
Yeah. Even if we had to stick handle around cones during games.
Yeah, if there's just a couple bit of ice out. Oh man. Well, we better get to sleep, folks. And this has been another episode. And actually, I haven't seen you in 17 years. And folks, if anybody's wondering if I'm having fun in my shed, I'm having a great time. And I got to see my roommate from the coast 17 years later today. And this has been another episode of Two Ales and Hockey Tales with Frankie and Wally.